What is the scariest situation you have ever been in? I broke 3 of my husband's ribs. I would do it again at any time because I saved his life with chest compressions. He fell over in our kitchen at the time. Dead. No heartbeat, no breathing. In Germany, everyone who gets a driver's license has to take a first aid course. I remembered everything from the course and I functioned like a robot. The ambulance came after 3 minutes and took over. He's alive and he is doing well. The fear that I suppressed at that moment unfortunately caught up with me later. Live in the countryside. Had to walk a mile home in the dark on a winter night after watching The Omen in a friend's house. No houses between his and mine. I was about 12. Waiting for a scan result after beating cancer once. My scan is next Tuesday. I was about 11 years old and off school sick with the flu. My mum worked in the little shop literally 5 minutes away from our house, so she left me alone that morning to do her shift, and I was just chilling on the couch watching television. I heard the front door open and assumed it was my mum home early. It was a random man who was heavily intoxicated. He went straight to the coffee table and lifted up my bottle of cough medicine and downed the entire lot. I ran and hid in the bathroom and cried. There was no mobile phones back then or anything. After a while, I had to run out in my pajamas, really sick, and run along to my mum's work. The police turned up and found the guy asleep on our couch. Getting hit by a jeep while walking across the street. Took a few years to not have an anxiety attack crossing the street if a car was even on the same street I was on. My ex blackout drunk screaming in my face while I hold our crying baby. I kept him off me by wielding a pathetic folding knife at him and fled out into the snow with nothing and walked the streets sobbing. A nice man pulled over and sat with us for a while and offered to help or for me to sit in his car for a little while, but I was so scared of men at that point that I just sat on the curb, holding my baby. His mother eventually came and let me sleep at her place for a few days. My dumbass went back and was there for 3.5 more years. Not even the worst thing he did to me, just the scariest. I slept with mace and a knife in my bra. I had a if I go missing or die file for my family. My husband was out of town, and I woke up to a man standing at the foot of my bed. I thought to myself calmly, so this is how I die. I forgot that I had dragged my elliptical trainer into the bedroom to make room for more shit in the living room. A jacket draped over gym equipment makes for an ominous figure. A few years ago, I was staying at a hostel in Daintree, Australia, right by the beach. It was the most beautiful place I had ever slept at. Seriously, I can't recommend it enough. One day, a couple of friends I met at the hostel and I decided to walk along the beach to grab some ice cream and groceries from a shop about a mile away. We left around 4 p.m, walked there without a care in the world, and stayed at the shop for about 30 minutes. On the way back, we took our time, soaking in the scenery. Then, out of nowhere, the beach just vanished. I thought we must have taken a wrong turn, but that was impossible. There's only one beach. When I turned around, I saw the same thing. The beach was disappearing behind us too. It hit me. The tide was rising, and fast. For someone from Australia, this would have been obvious. But for a clueless, newly graduated guy from the opposite side of the world, the concept of a rapidly rising tide was completely foreign. In front of us was a patch of mangroves, blocking the last bit of walkable sand, maybe 6 to 8 meters wide. We had no choice but to run for it. As I lifted a mangrove branch to let my 2 friends, both women, pass through, still believe in chivalry even in the face of danger, I suddenly remembered why it was dangerous to swim there besides the currents: crocodiles. And right there, not far from me, hidden among the leaves and branches, was a massive croc, staring at me from a disturbingly short distance. Those things can jump, and I knew it. A strange calm washed over me, and I imagined the headline, "Stupid tourist eaten alive by croc," because he was stupid, with my parents reading it in shock. By some miracle, the croc didn't move. Somehow, we made it through the mangroves and used the last bit of sand to get back to the hostel. When we got there, we just burst into hysterical laughter and never spoke of it again for the rest of the trip. Man, was I both stupid and lucky. As a kid playing on train tracks, my mum starts shouting at me. I look behind me and there is a train bearing down on me. Someone ran up there and pulled me off, but I was just stunned and couldn't move. There's these artificial rapids near where I live that people go down in inner tubes. Some people go down without a tube. You just have to be a very strong swimmer. Apparently, I overestimated myself. I got caught right in the rapid and couldn't break free. I clawed my way to the surface and got just a gasp of air. Then I was taken back under and didn't come back up until I was out of the rapids. Water is scary. I was tasked with repairing a light 80 feet up in the air at a baseball field. My company rented a 110-foot boom lift to give me access, but the ground was soft from rain the night before. I called my boss to express my concerns, telling him the lift was too heavy for the soft ground. He instructed me to call the client and get their approval. The client agreed, taking full responsibility if anything went wrong. After informing my boss, he insisted I proceed with the job. As I was up there, fixing the light, I happened to glance at the railing of the lift. It wasn't parallel with the horizon. I was 80 feet in the air, and the lift was slowly tipping over. Panic set in as I started lowering the lift, a painfully slow process. I knew that at any moment it could tip past a certain point, triggering a safety feature that would disable my controls. Miraculously, I made it down safely. Had I not noticed the railing, I might not be here today. Once on the ground, I saw how deeply the lift was buried in the soft earth. The client tried to pull it out with a tractor, but the chain snapped. I had to call a tow company, but they didn't have the equipment to get it out. After waiting for hours, another tow company arrived and had to bury anchors in the nearby asphalt just to pull the lift out. Total work hours that day, 16. Total near-death experiences, 1. Attention to details saved my life. Last December, I was driving home when suddenly I started having tunnel vision and felt like my chest was empty, and I pushed the ECG button on my Apple Watch. I pulled over and asked my wife to drive me to the fire station. My heart rate was about 230 beats per minute, and I was in sustained ventricular tachycardia for over 3 minutes before my rhythm returned to normal. I didn't lose consciousness, but I felt like I was standing on the edge of oblivion. Ended up with a pacemaker and no explanation why I'm still alive. Fucking scary. A guy flipped out on me and my dad at the checkout line in a grocery store. I was asking my dad if we forgot anything, and the guy in front of us flipped out on us. I guess he thought we said something to him. Anyway, he storms out swearing at us. We just brush it off. He was waiting outside for us in his Dodge Challenger and tried to run us over twice. We just barely managed to get back inside the store. We begged the employees to call police. They tell us it's not our responsibility. If someone was trying to kill you, then you call the cops. We haven't been back to that store since. I lost control of my motorcycle while going 80 miles per hour. In that split second, time seemed to stretch out, everything moving in slow motion as I parted ways with the bike. I could feel every moment, every sensation, as if my brain was processing 1,000 thoughts at once. It was the most terrifying few seconds of my life, yet it felt like an eternity. I was in a car accident with my dad once. Actually, I've been in like 4 with him. But we were waiting at a red light when it finally turned green. We started to go forward, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a van coming from the right that looked like it was going too fast to stop at its red light. I shouted, "Oh my God," because there was really nothing else I could do as a passenger, and my dad slammed on the brakes, making us run into the side of the van. It still kind of shakes both of us, because if I hadn't called out, my dad wouldn't have braked, and I would have been hit, instead of us hitting the van that was going 45 miles per hour. My ex used to beat me up. This one time, he was coked out, threw me in his car, and proceeded to race, zipping in between cars, swerving all over the road to the middle of nowhere, where he then beat my face off the dashboard till my nose and tongue, where bleeding forced me to do coke and told me he was going to kill me and leave my body in the woods. This was about a year and a half ago, and I still remember it clear as day and have the occasional nightmare. When I was 11, the house across the street from me caught fire. It was a fast-moving electrical fire. The boy who lived there was 14 and he had a 9-year-old sister. All of our parents worked full-time, so we were latchkey kids. This was the early 1990s. Anyway, the boy came hauling ass down the street screaming for any adult to come out and help because his house was on fire and he thought his little sister was in there. I was the only one who heard him, so I grabbed his hand and ran into my house and called 911. He wanted to run into the burning house to find his sister, and I knew he would die if he did. I was a scrawny, spindly little girl, 5 feet 6 inches and maybe 75 pounds, and he played defense on the football team at 5 feet 8 inches and probably 150 to 170. He was panicking and sobbing and thrashing around, but somehow I found the strength to physically hold him back until my little sister could run down the street to find an actual adult. I guess it was adrenaline or something. All I knew was that the only thing standing between that kid and a horrible death was me. The good news is that his sister wasn't in the house after all. She'd gone to a friend's house without telling him. But for about 15 minutes, we were sure she was in there burning, and I had to stop him from burning with her. I've been in other scary situations since then, but because of how young we were, that one stands out. When I was very young, my uncle and I were strolling through the mall when we suddenly heard a deafening boom. It was so loud that it shook the ground beneath us. Panic set in as people started screaming and running in every direction. My uncle grabbed my hand and we quickly tried to find a way out. It turned out that someone had bombed the mall that day. The fear I felt in that moment was indescribable. I'll never forget the sheer terror that gripped me as we fled the scene, not knowing if another explosion might follow. My first husband nearly ended my life. We got into a heated argument that escalated beyond control. In a fit of rage, he stabbed me 11 times. I was in sheer panic, fighting for my life, and in the chaos, I somehow managed to shoot him. The terror I felt in that moment was overwhelming. I truly believed I wouldn't make it out alive. Thankfully, he was arrested and sent to prison for a long time, but the fear and trauma of that night still haunt me. I've been in a car accident where we flipped over several times and landed upside down. I've been in a house fire. I've gotten alcohol poisoning. I've had a gun pulled on me, and about a year ago, I did way too much cocaine one night, to the point where I actually thought I was going to die. But none of that compares to the morning that my girlfriend called me and told me that she thought she was pregnant. I got caught on a cliff top while snowboarding, 50-meter fall down onto rocks. No way of undoing my binding or climbing up to safety. I was stuck until 6 p.m, where I got airlifted out by helicopter after being stuck for 3 hours. First time I have truly feared for my life. I didn't know it in the moment, but I definitely almost drowned once. I wasn't wearing my glasses, and I must have gotten caught in a current because I was trying to swim to shore, but I wasn't making any progress. I was a good swimmer, but it was getting dark, and I already couldn't see well without my glasses. I got tired and just started floating on my back, thinking, WTF do I do? But I wasn't really scared. Then a random dude on a jet ski saw me and gave me a ride back to the beach house. He almost certainly saved my life, but I didn't even realize how bad it was until like years later. I was 18, and this was at a high school graduation party. Another time that I was very scared in the moment was when my ex-husband had some kind of psychosis and threatened to kill me with a knife, then put the knife down and grabbed his mom's giant marble urn and held it over my head, saying he was going to bash my face in. Then he calmed down and asked me to hold his hand while he fell asleep. I did, and cried the whole time. Then, when I was sure he was asleep, I took my dog and GTFO. Toss up between waking up needing to pee while camping, then realizing that there was a bear outside of our trailer when going to get my dad to take me to the bathroom. Still had to pee. We had up wait for the bear. Thankfully a black bear, but I was like 8. To wander off, then walk out into the night to go to the bathrooms, knowing a bear was wandering around. And the time I was in a grocery store and armed robbers came in and held up the place. I also happened to be with my dad that time. We had to hide with a bunch of other people back in the storeroom behind the butcher's counter. Back in 2015, while flying to San Diego for a high school trip, our plane was struck by lightning. The sound was deafening, and the entire plane shook violently. I remember the intense fear that gripped everyone on board, and my ears were ringing for hours afterward. It was a terrifying experience that I'll never forget. We are going to need a lot of context for this one. When I was in 7th grade, I went to a new school, so I didn't know anyone. I saw this kid alone and he was disabled, or at least I thought he was. The thing is, I started talking to him and getting other people to do so, mostly my brother. Since I didn't have many friends, at first he seemed like a quirky, nerdy kid. I have been calling him a kid, but honestly, he looked like an adult. But as I got to know him better, I realized why he was alone. The fact is that he harassed every girl and told them he liked them. Not even teachers or little kids would be safe. I heard him talking about how a 3rd grader was hot. But he started picking me out the most out of everyone. He would talk weird to me. He would make it so teachers would pair us up with group projects, to the point that I asked a teacher if I could do the project alone because my friends were already paired up, and he scared me. She thankfully said yes. And he also told me some disturbing things about like how he stabbed his cousin and that he had a girlfriend and did witchcraft on her so she would never leave him. The worst thing he did was around the end of the school year. We were in the lunch line and we were pretty close to each other, and he started rubbing his thing against me and touching me. I told him to stop and back off, but he refused. A guy that was ahead of me and was my friend traded places with me. You may ask, where was the principal during all of this? She was well aware of his behavior, but she let him continue because he was disabled, which is really creepy considering that her daughter was my classmate and one of the teachers was also her daughter. She only took matters into her own hands after my mum threatened her, and she didn't even said anything. She just made a rule that we would have to stay 1 meter apart in the lunch line, so in the end, she didn't fix anything. This is super lame in comparison to most of these stories. But I was going to pick my boyfriend up from the train station after he'd gone to visit his mum. It was a rainy night, and I was driving down a road with a 35 speed limit. I'm not speeding. I'm going 35, but a car pulls out right in front of me. I had to slam on my brakes and hydroplaned a little, but was able to avoid the car. But I swear, I thought I was going to die. When I got to the train station and my boyfriend gets in the car, he says, "Hey, I missed you." And I just absolutely burst into tears. I couldn't get it together the whole drive home. Later, my boyfriend said he thought I had cheated or something, LOL. Nope, just pure adrenaline crash. I was on a plane that caught fire while we were flying over the Gulf of Mexico, about an hour from land. The fear was paralyzing as we sat there, trying to stay calm, knowing help was far away. Even years later, the experience left me with a deep fear of flying. I found myself hanging off the side of a 3-story IKEA parking lot. It was a moment of pure terror, realizing how close I was to falling. My heart was pounding as I desperately tried to pull myself back up. That experience left me shaken, and I still get chills thinking about it. Nearly got into a head-on collision because some dude decided to text and drive. My heart stopped for a second. Was involved in an approximately 8-car wreck at the tip of Florida on the way to Key West. 2 cars smashed together right in front of me, and the car I was in managed to squeak through as they parted without much damage other than flying debris and glass. Cars were on fire. 1 car had the front ripped right off and a dead person in the car. Bloody kids stumbled out of one SUV and all the other occupants were dead. It was absolutely insane. I asked my dad to look after my cat when I went away on Monday. However, he ended up entering my house on the wrong Monday while I was still half asleep. I woke up to the sound of someone moving around in my home, and for a moment, I was paralyzed with fear, thinking it was an intruder. When I finally realized it was my dad, the relief was overwhelming. but the initial terror I felt was intense. It's funny now, but at that moment it was absolutely terrifying. How the hell do adults make friends? Find a group of people doing an activity you like to do. Adults make friends by finding common interests and showing up consistently. Beer. Adults make friends by finding common interests, joining groups or activities, and being open to new experiences. It often takes effort and consistency, but starting with shared hobbies or mutual connections can make it easier. Step 1. Find someone who shares your interests. It could be through a hobby, at work, or even online. Step 2. Awkwardly try to schedule a hangout, juggling both your busy schedules and hoping it doesn't fall through. It might take a few attempts, but eventually you'll settle on a date that works. Step 3. When you finally meet up, bond over the shared struggles of adulting, complaining about work, bills, and how tiring life can be. It's in these moments that true friendships often form, as you both realize you're not alone in navigating the complexities of adult life. Keep showing up to the same places, gym, coffee shop, whatever. Familiar faces eventually become friendly faces. When people have kids, they often end up making friends with the parents of their children's friends. It's an easy way to connect because you already have something in common: raising kids. School events, play dates, and birthday parties create opportunities to build these friendships, and before you know it, you're sharing parenting tips and bonding over the joys and challenges of raising children. Alternatively, join a sports hobby, etc. group to meet like-minded people. You will already have a common interest, the basis of lots of friendships. Work, hobbies, just random interactions, but I'm an extrovert, and because of that, I will talk to anyone, anywhere, about anything. Some people like the way I am and want to be friends. The downside of it's that some people think I'm their friend just BC, I talk to them a lot. Join a community that you're interested in. Sport-specific gym like CrossFit, powerlifting, strongman, etc. Car club, volunteer at your local animal shelter. Book club, D&D or other tabletop group. Card game tournaments at local shops. Basically ask yourself, what are your hobbies or what is a hobby you'd like to get into? Find a local gathering of said hobby and make connections with people over a shared interest. Hobbies. I moved to a new city at 30, started doing theatre classes, met tons of people, met my wife and a core group of friends, and we do stuff together occasionally. Harder now though, since half of them are married with little kids. I think things will get better in a few years and kids are older and can go do their own thing without needing constant supervision. Adults make friends by strategically placing themselves in places where people are forced to interact, like kids' soccer games, PTA meetings, or even the break room at work. It's like the adult version of, if you build it, they will come. But instead of a baseball field, it's a coffee machine and a shared sense of existential dread. So as via satellite? But honestly, we don't make many new friends. We acquire acquaintances. And if you're asking to get them, I think groups and clubs you're interested in. We have 1 to 3 down-ass friends we have had growing up. They get the same energy you give your family because you built that dynamic over 25 years. They grew with you. Your family becomes your life. Your partner is your best friend. But I can only say as my experience and opinion. After high school, making new friends became a lot harder for me. The only place I've been able to form real friendships is at work. One of my closest friends today is actually a co-worker. We started off just chatting during lunch breaks and gradually realized we had a lot in common. Over time, those casual conversations turned into deeper discussions, and now we hang out outside of work regularly. It's funny how a shared workspace can bring people together in ways you wouldn't expect, but I'm grateful for it. Usually my wife is the one who makes new friends, and I just tag along. She's much better at socializing, and I'm more introverted, so it works out. She'll set up plans, and I'll join in, and before I know it, I'm making connections too. It's kind of like having a social life by proxy. That's the funny part. They do not make friends. Most of friends that you met in your adulthood are known strangers. Never expect a friendship like when you were young. Talk to adults and ask them if they would leave their house keys to their friends. Can happen? Yes, but it is hard. Understand it as another type of friendship. Edit. Of course, depends on where are you and how are you. However, most of the people you meet are because you are neighbors, workmates, friend of a friend. The problem is, what do you think a friend is? People have less time and having a friend is a heavy investment. For me, making friends used to be easiest at work. I'd connect with colleagues over projects, grab coffee together, and friendships would naturally form. But now that I work from home, those opportunities have mostly disappeared. I find myself spending more time alone and it's definitely quieter. However, I'm fortunate to live with my partner, which makes all the difference. It's not the same as having a wide social circle, but it's comforting to have someone close by so I don't feel lonely even in the quiet moments. Beer, sports, food, couch. To make friends as an adult, sometimes you just have to put yourself out there. Join clubs, attend events, or go to social gatherings where you can meet people with similar interests. It might feel awkward at first, but it's all about taking that first step. Once you start connecting with people who share your passions, friendships can develop naturally. The key is to be open to new experiences and give yourself the chance to meet others, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. Before focusing on making friends, it's important to develop more hobbies or interests. Friendships don't usually form from just 1 or 2 chance meetings. They need time to grow. You have to be in the same place, doing the same thing over multiple weeks for real connections to happen. Whether it's joining a club, taking a class, or getting involved in a community activity, the more you engage in regular activities, the easier it becomes to meet people and build lasting friendships. First, you put on a show, tailoring your behavior to match the quirks you perceive in potential friends. Once you've gained their trust, you move on to the next person and repeat the process, playing both sides to keep everyone satisfied. Keep this up, and before you know it, you've somehow managed to create chaos, leaving a trail of confusion and broken friendships in your wake. It's almost like you've single-handedly disrupted the entire tri-state area just by playing everyone against each other. The key to making friends as an adult is to find something you genuinely enjoy and then do the social version of it. If you love gaming, try playing multiplayer games to connect with others. Into Dungeons & Dragons? Look for an in-person table nearby. Enjoy running? Join a local running club. The idea is to take what you already love doing and find a way to do it with others who share your passion. It's a natural way to build friendships around shared interests. The process of making friends as an adult often starts simply by meeting new people. Whether it's through work, a social event, or even just random encounters, the key is to keep an open mind. If you find that you click with someone, maybe you share similar interests, humor, or just have an easy conversation, then take the next step and try to hang out with them outside of that initial setting. Suggest grabbing coffee, catching a movie, or doing something you both enjoy. It might feel a bit awkward at first, but that's just part of the process. Building friendships takes effort and initiative, and sometimes it means stepping out of your comfort zone. But if you find that connection, it's worth pursuing. Over time, those casual hangouts can turn into meaningful relationships that enrich your life in ways you might not have expected. Bash them on the head with a club and drag them back to the cave. The best way to make friends as an adult is to dive into a hobby you love and find a local group that shares that interest. Whether it's running, gaming, or something else entirely, joining a group gives you the chance to meet people with similar passions. Attend group meetups and start conversations with others about your shared hobby. It's even better if the activity involves grabbing a beer or hanging out in a relaxed setting at some point. It helps to break the ice and make connections feel more natural. For example, my wife and I had been living in our area for 6 years and didn't really have any local friends. It wasn't until we joined a local running club last year that things started to change. Suddenly we were meeting new people, getting invited to group events, and even found ourselves playing D&D with some of them. What started as a simple hobby turned into a solid social circle. Now we have friends who we see regularly, and it's made our lives so much richer. Making friends with your neighbors is one of the easiest ways to build and maintain friendships as an adult. The proximity makes it convenient to hang out, and you're more likely to see each other regularly. If you live less than a block away, you've already removed a huge barrier to maintaining a social connection. A great way to break the ice is to fire up the smoker, fill a cooler with beer, and invite your neighbors over for a casual get-together. It's a relaxed setting where people can bond over good food, drinks, and the shared experience of living in the same community. Making friends as an adult can definitely be a challenge, but it's totally doable. Here are some tips that might help. 1. Expand your interests. Join groups or clubs that focus on activities you enjoy, whether it's a book club, sports team, or hobby class. This gives you a built-in topic to chat about with others. 2. Utilize social media. Platforms like Meetup or local Facebook groups can help connect you with people in your area who share similar interests. 3. Volunteer. Getting involved in community service not only feels great, but you also meet compassionate people who care about similar causes. 4. Reconnect with acquaintances. Reach out to colleagues, neighbors, or even friends from school. Sometimes reconnecting with someone you already know can lead to a deeper friendship. 5. Be open and approachable. Smile, start small conversations, and be willing to share a little about yourself. Sometimes, it just takes a friendly hello to start a connection. 6. Attend events. Go to local events, workshops, or lectures that interest you. You never know who you might meet, and being in a shared environment makes interaction easier. 7. Take the initiative. Don't be afraid to invite someone for coffee or to hang out. Adults often expect friendships to just happen, but sometimes you need to make the first move. Remember, it's normal to feel awkward at first, but putting yourself out there is key. Good luck, and have fun making new connections. Making friends as an adult can feel a lot like dating, just without the romance. You meet people through activities or hobbies you enjoy, and the key is to keep things casual at first. Whether it's chatting after a group activity or during a shared interest, the goal is to make connections without putting too much pressure on it. Show genuine interest in the other person's life and experiences, and over time, those casual conversations can evolve into meaningful friendships. It's about being open, patient, and allowing things to develop naturally. Sometimes making friends as an adult happens completely by chance. I met my now best friend a few years ago when we were both stuck on a stranded train together. We started talking to pass the time, and that random encounter turned into a strong friendship. It really shows that just being open to meeting new people can lead to unexpected and meaningful connections. You never know when or where you might meet someone who will become an important part of your life. One way to make friends as an adult is by going to a bar with a pool table and asking around for a game. It's a great icebreaker, and you'll start to recognize the regulars if you keep coming back. Over time, casual conversations during the game can turn into genuine friendships. The relaxed atmosphere of the bar makes it easier to chat and connect with others, and before you know it, you'll be part of a social circle that enjoys hanging out and playing pool together. If you're a professional, you won't have friends like you did when you were a kid. Me, I'm in a dream job to which many are called but few chosen, and if you're not married to it, you don't get to do it at all. No, I can't stay out till midnight drinking. No, you can't call me at 3 a.m. because you found out your boyfriend is cheating. I need to be up at 5. That's just how it is. Getting into hobbies with a local scene is a great way to meet people who share your interests. Going to the weekly Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournaments near me has helped me meet with some really great people and make new friends. What do you like to do? To make friends, it helps if you're in a classroom or at work with people seeing each other all the time. But that's not the same as share interests. Do you like to drink? Go to a bar and check other tables? Do you like to play games? There's classics like chess, and you can be at a park waiting for some challenger. The same with other games. Do you like to dance? Go to a dance class, the same as cooking or other activities. It's more easy as a kid, teen, but not impossible as an adult. Go outside. Which historical figure is often considered a hero but was actually evil? Most people you've ever heard of in a position of power. Einstein treated his wife like shit and then banged his cousin. For some reason, this is really common in history. Henry Ford was a mixed bag. On one hand, he did revolutionize manufacturing, and when auto sales outperformed expectations, he wanted to lower prices and raise salaries, which his board fought and took to the Supreme Court, who decided that the shareholders were more important than the customers and workforce. On the other, he was a eugenicist and supportive of fascist movements in Europe. If you want to get a different perspective on the Kennedys, you should definitely check out Maureen Callahan's book, The Kennedys and the Women They Destroyed. It's a real eye-opener that dives deep into the darker side of this famous family. The book reveals how the Kennedys, who are often celebrated as American heroes, had a long history of mistreating the women in their lives. The stories are shocking and show a side of the Kennedys that is rarely discussed. After reading it, you might find yourself rethinking the legacy of this iconic family. Thomas Edison. Many of his patents were based on stolen ideas and inventions, but Edison was simply first at the patent office. After Tesla invented alternating electric current, which would provide a great technological progress, Edison funded the campaign against it, during which was electrifying to death dogs as the proof of deadly Tesla's invention. Jerry the mouse from Tom and Jerry. Tom is a household cat, and it's his job to hunt Jerry. While Tom might do some crazy shit on his own, he's literally just following the order of his owner. Exterminate the vermin or you'll get kicked out of the house. Not to mention, sometimes Jerry is the one who starts the fight. He steals food from the refrigerator knowing that it might put Tom responsible for his selfish actions, and he sometimes taunts Tom when he's not bothering him even. As a child, we root for Jerry for being the underdog, but now, as an adult, I can wholeheartedly say that I despise Jerry from the bottom of my heart. Gandhi is often revered as a symbol of peace and non-violence, but there's a much darker side to his legacy that is rarely discussed. He has been accused of engaging in inappropriate behavior with young girls, which has led some to label him as a pedophile. These allegations cast a shadow over his otherwise celebrated image, and they challenge the way we view his contributions to history. It's a reminder that even figures who are widely considered heroes can have deeply troubling aspects to their lives. Most of them just depends which side you're on. Andrew Jackson, the man on the $20 bill, is often celebrated as a populist hero, but his legacy includes actions that were anything but heroic. Jackson claimed he was acting in the best interest of Native Americans when he signed the Indian Removal Act, which he argued would protect them by relocating them to lands west of the Mississippi. In reality, this policy led to the infamous Trail of Tears, where thousands of Native Americans were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands, suffering from disease, starvation, and death along the way. Jackson not only implemented this devastating policy, but also lied about its intentions, presenting it as a benevolent act while knowing the harm it would cause. His actions caused generations of suffering and left a scar on American history that is still felt today. Despite his portrayal as a champion of the common man, Jackson's treatment of Native Americans reveals a much darker side to his legacy, one that is rooted in deceit and cruelty. Jebediah Springfield, often hailed as the founder and hero of Springfield, has a dark past that few know about. he was actually Hans Sprungfeld, a ruthless pirate and murderer who reinvented himself to escape his violent history. While he's celebrated as a hero, the truth is far more sinister. This revelation challenges the idealized image of Jebediah and shows how easily history can be rewritten to hide the truth. Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers and the author of the Declaration of Independence, is often celebrated for his contributions to American history. However, there's a deeply troubling aspect of his life that complicates his legacy. Jefferson had 6 children with Sally Hemings, who was not only his deceased wife's half-sister, but also his slave. This relationship highlights the hypocrisy of a man who wrote about freedom and equality while simultaneously owning and exploiting slaves. The power dynamics at play make it impossible to view this relationship as anything other than deeply problematic. Jefferson's actions reveal a darker side to a figure who is often idealized, forcing us to confront the contradictions in his life and legacy. Augustus had thousands of wealthy Romans slaughtered to take their wealth, made his closest family miserable with forced marriages and divorces, exiled his only child, and later her daughter as well, and of course launched campaigns of mass murder and enslavement against foreign tribes, but that was part of the job description, I guess. Peter Venkman, often seen as the charming and heroic figure in Ghostbusters, actually had some questionable practices. Walter Peck, who is often portrayed as the antagonist, had legitimate concerns about the Ghostbusters operations. Think about it. These guys were running around New York City with unlicensed nuclear accelerators strapped to their backs and maintaining a ghost containment unit with no regulatory oversight. Peck was within his rights to be concerned about the potential dangers, and in reality, his actions were about ensuring public safety. Venkman's dismissive attitude toward these valid concerns casts him in a less heroic light when you consider the real risks involved. He was a dick, but he was right. Kurt Cobain. Him and Courtney Love both allegedly did heroin and coke while Courtney was pregnant with Francis. Francis was rumored to be born addicted to heroin. He made several creepy voicemails to Victoria Clark, threatening to hire a hitman and hurt her. He choked Courtney out over an argument about Kurt's guns. Among other things, he wasn't that great of a guy, no matter how good he looked. Charles Lindbergh. First transatlantic flight, poggers, but also supported the Nazis. If you mean historical figures traditionally supported in our narratives, or who were popular at the time, but who don't align with our modern sensibilities, or whose policies ended up leading to horrific long-term ramifications, yes. Charles Lindbergh was a really disturbing character who likely murdered his own 1-year-old son for being developmentally delayed. The case was reported as a stranger abduction gone wrong, but if you search for the Lindbergh baby, you will find plenty of cause for concern. Most of the heroes that died in the Alamo were shifty degenerates that were running from legal problems or financial ruin. Not to mention the entire reason Mexico went to war with Texas was because Anglo-American settlers who moved in began using the cheap land they bought to cultivate cotton, among other crops, using slave labor. Mexico passed a ban on slavery in 1829, and 7 years later, they ended up in a war against a renegade region of their country, filled with American settlers that refused to even talk about eventually phasing out slavery. All the talk of freedom and democratic rights were a precursor to the South's spin on why the Civil War happened. Texas was literally just an invasion of drunks and opportunists turned slavers that refused to obey the law of the country they emigrated to. Motherfucking Teresa. You know who won't be on this list? Jimmy Carter. The man is an absolute unit when it comes to humanitarian causes. Even after his presidency, Carter dedicated his life to helping others, whether it was through building homes with Habitat for Humanity or advocating for peace and human rights around the world. His legacy is one of compassion, service, and unwavering commitment to making the world a better place. Joseph Stalin is often viewed as a hero by some Russians and certain tankies, but the reality is far more sinister. While he's credited with leading the Soviet Union to victory in World War II, his regime was marked by mass purges, forced labor camps, and the deliberate starvation of millions. Stalin's rule was characterized by a level of brutality and oppression that places him in the same league as Adolf Hitler in terms of the sheer scale of human suffering he caused. Despite the propaganda that portrays him as a great leader, the truth is that Stalin's actions were nothing short of evil, leaving a legacy of terror and death that continues to haunt history. Here's the thing. People who do great things often seem to do awful things as well. Those great things don't nullify their atrocities. However, their acts of evil also don't cause their great achievements to be disregarded either. They just exist as people who did both, just like the rest of us, just to differing degrees. Fritz Haber is the best example. Without him, we wouldn't be able to feed most of the world. He also invented the compound the Nazis used to exterminate Jews. Humans are complicated creatures. For hipsters and some revolutionaries, Che Guevara is often idolized as a symbol of rebellion and justice. However, the reality is more complex. While he fought for what he believed in, Che was also responsible for numerous executions without trial and advocated for violent revolution. His legacy is a mix of idealism and brutality, making him a far more controversial figure than many of his admirers might realize. Robespierre is often viewed as a champion of the French Revolution's ideals, but his role in the Reign of Terror led to widespread executions and fear. His pursuit of revolutionary purity resulted in significant suffering and brutality. Oliver Cromwell is often celebrated in England with statues and monuments, praised as a capable military commander and a key figure in British history. However, this positive image overlooks the atrocities he committed, particularly against the Irish. Cromwell was responsible for multiple massacres of innocent Irish civilians, actions so brutal that it's hard to fathom how he could be remembered for anything other than his cruelty. The fact that he's still honoured in some circles is baffling, considering the deep scars his actions left on Ireland and its people. His legacy is a stark reminder of how history can sometimes gloss over the darker deeds of those in power. Reagan, we can draw a direct line to our current challenges to his tax law changes. I would add Nancy in there as well. I wish someone just said no to both of them, and I don't understand the current infatuation with their reign of terror. Che Guevara is often romanticized as a revolutionary hero, but a closer look at his life reveals a far more troubling figure. Guevara was a staunch supporter of communism and played a significant role in establishing a brutal regime in Cuba. He was also openly homophobic and misogynistic, with little regard for human life, as evidenced by the numerous executions he oversaw without trial. While he is idolized by some, the reality is that Che was responsible for immense suffering and upheld oppressive ideologies. His legacy is far from the heroic image often portrayed and serves as a reminder of the dangers of idealizing historical figures without fully understanding their actions. In the US, I feel like it's only been like 5 or 10 years that people are starting to second-guess the morality of Andrew Jackson, the horrific criminal against humanity that forced the Trail of Tears. I mean, he's on our money. Not considered by most people, but people who were in Yeltsin's team in the 90s tried to convince Russians that they were heroes. They saved Russians from famine and freeze, provided vital reforms, and didn't reach the end of the crisis. In fact, these reforms were prepared before their arrival and provided very hastily. With the dissolution of the Soviet Union, it put the whole Russian economy in a very difficult position. And then they didn't do anything to fix it, only begging for loans from the IMF and investing in pyramid schemes. Mao Zedong is often remembered as the founding father of modern China, but his legacy is deeply tainted by the atrocities he committed. Under his rule, millions of people died from famine, persecution, and political purges. Despite his significant role in shaping China, the human cost of his policies is staggering. Mentioning Mao's darker side can still be controversial, but it's essential to acknowledge the immense suffering he caused. George Washington. By all accounts, George Washington is at best an asshole, at worst, a war criminal. The Iroquois called him town destroyer for his genocide of over 40 Native American villages during the Sullivan Expedition. Thomas Jefferson considers him to be a despotic tyrant. George Washington is a hard master, very severe, a hard husband, a hard father, a hard governor. From his childhood, he always ruled and ruled severely. He was first brought up to govern slaves, he then governed an army, then a nation. He thinks hard of all, is despotic in every respect. He mistrusts every man, thinks every man a rogue and nothing but severity will do. He has no idea of people being left to themselves to act. He thinks that they cannot think, and that they ought only to obey. Also, he signed the Fugitive Slave Law to prevent slaves like his escaped Oni judge from seeking refuge in other states. J. Edgar Hoover is often credited with founding the FBI and shaping it into a powerful law enforcement agency. But his legacy is far more controversial. While he did establish the FBI, Hoover also used it as a tool for his own personal agenda, primarily to gather dirt on political leaders and influential figures for blackmail purposes. His tactics included widespread surveillance, intimidation, and the suppression of civil rights movements. In many ways, Hoover's actions laid the groundwork for what some now refer to as the deep state, where government agencies operate with significant power and minimal oversight. Despite his contributions to law enforcement, Hoover's legacy is marred by the abuses of power that characterized his tenure. Almost every US president. Louis Mountbatten is often remembered as a prominent British naval officer and statesman, but there are deeply troubling aspects of his legacy that are frequently overlooked. Mountbatten has been accused of pederasty, and his role in the partition of India led to widespread violence and mass murder. As the last Viceroy of India, he oversaw the hurried and poorly planned division of the country, which resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands and the displacement of millions. The chaos and bloodshed that followed are a direct consequence of his actions, yet his darker deeds are often overshadowed by his public image. Mountbatten's legacy is a stark reminder of the devastating impact of colonialism and the personal failings of those in power. Churchill was considered a century outdated in his worldview even by the standards of the early 20th century. He was a massive bigot and staunch imperialist. He likely agreed with many of not all of Hitler's beliefs and fought against him simply due to his belief in British supremacy. That doesn't negate him being a hero, though he was still essential in achieving an Allied victory in WW2. He can be both a hero and a terrible person. George Washington and other US founders. The US Revolution is often painted as a glorious fight for liberty against a tyrannical empire. In reality, the UK was already one of most democratic countries in the world at this point, and the revolution was mainly motivated by the colonists' desire to expand west into the native lands Britain was guaranteeing, as well as fear at the growing movement in Britain against slavery. Gandhi, deeply racist and hypocritical scumbag who treated women atrociously, even by the standards of the time, and also a pedo. Harry S. Truman, one evil motherfucker. Go watch the film Downwind, 2023. It's streaming on Peacock. Basically, he had the First Nation people of the Western Shoshone and the Mormons of southwestern Utah labeled as low-use people so that they could test over 900 nuclear, atomic weapons on the Yucca Flat in Nevada, killing thousands through long-term fallout exposure. not to mention the 2 atomic weapons he authorized to detonate over Japan in 1945. Maybe unpopular opinion, Winston Churchill. He literally starved millions of Indian people and was a racist to boot. He wrote about Native Americans and Australians, a stronger race, a higher grade race, a more worldly wise race, to put it that way, has come in and taken their place. Evil is indeed a complex term, and it raises difficult questions when applied to historical figures like Winston Churchill. Churchill is often celebrated as a heroic leader for his role in guiding Britain through World War II, but he also held deeply racist views and made decisions that had catastrophic consequences for millions, such as his role in the Bengal famine. His heavy drinking and controversial statements add further layers to his complex character. While some may argue that his actions during the war make him a hero, others might see his prejudiced views and harmful policies as evidence of a darker side. It challenges us to reconsider how we define and judge historical figures, acknowledging both their achievements and their flaws. ITT, a bunch of examples of people who are most well known today for being considered examples of people who were once celebrated and have since almost categorically been recognized as flawed or harmful. To add to the hot takes, Dano Steve Buscemi was a firefighter on 9/11. What is something they do in movies that is literally impossible in real life? Hacking into a super secure government system in like 10 seconds by just furiously typing on a keyboard. Yelling enhance at a screen to get a larger photo with equal resolution. There is a movie with Denzel Washington about a runaway train. The antagonist cuts the brake lights, which are air brakes, and the train becomes out of control. If you cut the air to the brakes, the train will come to an immediate stop. Air brakes require air to stay open. Characters crashing through windows or walls without getting a single cut or bruise is something that's completely unrealistic in real life. I don't think you can actually stack groceries in a paper bag in such a way that only a carton of milk and a baguette stick out of the top. People getting knocked out for hours and waking up fine. Total Hollywood fantasy. In real life, you'd have brain damage or worse. In movies, characters often get shot and then just carry on with their day, maybe with a slight limp as if it's no big deal. In reality, getting shot is a traumatic event that typically requires immediate medical attention, and the pain and damage can be debilitating. The idea that someone could just shake it off and continue fighting or even walking around is pure fiction. The human body doesn't work that way, and the recovery process is far more intense than what's usually portrayed on screen. So, want to get a coffee sometime? Sure, that would be nice. Great. Now I'm going to walk away without getting your contact info, knowing anything about your schedule of free time, or even setting up a time and place to meet at a coffee shop. We're just going to somehow randomly both end up at the same place in the future without any planning whatsoever. In movies, you often see characters falling from a significant height and miraculously catching themselves on a pipe or ledge, sometimes even with just one hand. In real life, the force from a fall like that would likely rip your shoulder out of its socket or make it impossible to hold on. The human body isn't built to withstand that kind of impact, and the idea that someone could catch themselves so easily is purely Hollywood magic. The reality would be much more painful and far less heroic. Flying on a dragon is one of those epic movie moments that's pure fantasy. As cool as it looks on screen, I have yet to see anyone manage to do that in real life. Dragons don't exist, and even if they did, the physics of riding one through the sky would be impossible. It's a great piece of escapism, but definitely something that's staying in the realm of fiction. No matter how many times we see it in movies, it's not something that's ever going to happen in reality. Driving normal production cars through closed metal gates, barriers, and even walls, and continuing to drive their miraculously intact car thereafter, with their faces still on. shooting 94 bullets from a gun without reloading from a gun that holds 6. In movies, characters casually have conversations in helicopters as if they're sitting in a quiet room. In reality, helicopters are incredibly loud, even with earplugs and ear defenders on. The noise level makes it nearly impossible to hear anything, let alone have a full conversation without shouting. The idea of chatting normally in a helicopter without any hearing protection is just another piece of movie magic that doesn't hold up in real life. Hearing sounds in space. I get it's probably awkward without the sound effects, but it always makes me laugh just thinking that IRL it would be completely silent. In movies, space battles are always filled with dramatic sound effects, explosions, laser blasts, engines roaring. But the reality is, space is a vacuum, and sound can't travel in a vacuum. So, if you were actually out there in space, it would be completely silent, no matter how intense the action. I get that it would be awkward to have a silent space battle on screen, but it always makes me laugh to think about how different it would be in real life. Instead of all that noise, you just see things happening in complete, eerie silence, which is a far cry from the adrenaline-pumping scenes we're used to. People walking away from massive explosions without even flinching. In real life, the force, heat, and sound would knock you off your feet, not to mention the shrapnel flying everywhere. But in movies, they just stroll away like it's no big deal, looking cool as ever. Having a deep, meaningful conversation while the world falls apart around you. In real life, I'd be too busy dodging falling debris. Loele. In movies, characters have this uncanny ability to turn on the TV exactly at the moment when the news anchor is delivering the crucial piece of information they need. In real life, the chances of that happening are pretty much zero. You'd more likely catch the tail end of a weather report or some unrelated story. It's a convenient plot device, but definitely not something that would happen with such perfect timing outside of a scripted scene. When female characters cut their hair with scissors or a knife, and it's the hottest, flawless, salon-quality pixie cut. Walking into a bar and having the perfect witty comeback for every single attempted insult thrown your way, all while the entire place erupts in laughter at your razor-sharp timing. In real life, I'd think of the perfect retort, 3 hours later in the shower. Not literally impossible, but practically unlikely. In movies, characters often find street parking right outside their destination, even in the heart of a busy city, in the middle of a weekday. Anyone who's ever driven in a city knows how frustratingly rare this is. In real life, you'd be circling the block for ages, or settling for a spot several streets away if you're lucky. It's a small detail, but one that always stands out because of how convenient it is for the plot. The reality is far more frustrating, involving much more time, patience, and probably a bit of swearing as you try to find that elusive parking spot. Hitting somebody in the head to knock them out, and the person wakes up completely fine. No, they just sent that person's brain offline with a very large chance to die, a concussion, and not to mention the very possible chance of brain damage. Shake off getting knocked the fuck out and go about your day. That shit fucks you up for a few days at least. If you're on your back with a grown man on top of you in mount position for the MMA fans, choking you with your shoulders on the ground, there's zero chance you can pick up a lamp or something and swing it with enough force from that position to do anything but annoy the guy on top of you. In movies, a character can walk into a bar, casually order a beer, and the bartender magically knows exactly what kind to serve. Then, almost on cue, a beautiful woman strikes up a conversation, and before you know it, the scene cuts to them in bed, with the sheets perfectly arranged for a PG-13 rating. In reality, ordering a beer would likely prompt the bartender to ask, what kind? Since there are dozens of options. As for instantly hitting it off with a stranger and ending up in bed within minutes, let's just say real-life interactions are usually a lot more complicated and far less cinematic. It's a tidy, idealized sequence that rarely, if ever, happens outside of Hollywood. making a bullet curve simply by flicking your wrist while you shoot a gun. In movies, characters are often between jobs, yet somehow still manage to live a pretty comfortable lifestyle. They're shown going out to eat with friends, keeping up with their mortgage payments, and generally not stressing too much about finances. In reality, being between jobs usually means tightening the budget, worrying about bills, and definitely cutting back on dining out. The financial strain of unemployment is often significant, and the carefree attitude portrayed in films is far from the truth for most people. It's a convenient plot device that glosses over the harsh realities of job loss, making it seem much less stressful than it actually is. In movies, characters often fire weapons indoors and then immediately start conversing as if nothing happened, all without wearing any ear protection. In reality, the noise from a gunshot in an enclosed space is deafening and would leave your ears ringing, making normal conversation nearly impossible. The lack of ear protection in these scenes is pure fiction, as the sound levels would cause significant hearing damage and make communication extremely difficult. A wild animal is attacking me. No problem, I'll lie on the ground with a spear in the air, and they'll leap on top of it to impale themselves. Lifelong martial artist here. I've never seen a 5'3", 120-pound woman KO a grown man who's significantly bigger than her with one shot. Not once. People not showing any signs of adrenaline or an adrenaline dump after stressful situations. There will be shaking, physically, voice, breathe, and there will be a physical and psychological reaction to it ending. In movies, characters often take a pill and experience immediate effects, whether it's a painkiller, a sedative, or something else. In reality, most medications take time to work, often requiring 20 to 30 minutes, or even longer, to be absorbed into the bloodstream and start having an effect. The idea that a pill would kick in instantly is pure Hollywood magic, and it's far from how things work in real life. Intentionally slicing their hand open for whatever dumb reason, blood oath or something, and then not having a weeping, painful, infected wound that reopens every time you use that hand for weeks. Punch a guy in the face 100 times and never knock out a tooth. Also, all the facial cuts are miraculously healed within minutes. A small woman beating up a large man. Sure, certain self-defense moves are beneficial in this scenario, but in the movies we see smallish women leads absolutely kicking ass, throwing dudes through windows and walls, etc. Nope. In movies and fairy tales, enchanted animals often talk just like humans, delivering perfect speech with no issues at all. But if animals could actually speak, they'd likely have huge speech impediments due to the different shapes of their teeth, tongues, lips, and other parts of their mouths. Imagine a cat or a dog trying to form words with their sharp teeth and long tongues. It would be almost impossible for them to produce clear human speech. The idea of animals talking like humans is charming and fun, but in reality their anatomy would make it extremely difficult, if not downright comical, to understand them. Stomping really hard and making a whole parking lot collapse, I'm looking at you, Vin Diesel. In movies, characters can chase someone through a chaotic urban environment, taking dozens of turns and losing sight of them multiple times, yet somehow still manage to find them at the end of a dead-end alley. In real life, navigating a busy city while chasing someone would be far more complicated. With all the obstacles, crowds, and the sheer number of possible escape routes, the chances of actually catching up to them after losing them so many times would be incredibly slim. It's a scenario that's far more about cinematic convenience than reality. Flying from hood of a car at any speed, getting up and running. I came off 1 under 5 miles per hour, wrecked my sweater, and had to lay down for an hour. All these fight scenes where they are actively blocking each other's punches and kicks for a long drawn-out fight. Real fights don't happen that way. In fact, if you ever watch martial arts tournaments, most points or knockouts happen within seconds, and any actual blocks are done like boxers, where you are protecting the head or body by keeping your arms in close. Whereas in these martial arts movies, they are wildly moving their arms in wide motions, blocking. In movies, characters often hang up the phone abruptly without saying goodbye, making plans or even acknowledging the end of the conversation. In real life, this would be considered rude and leave the other person confused. Most people wrap up phone calls with some form of closure, whether it's a quick bye or a confirmation of what's next. The abrupt hang-up is a movie trope that skips over the small social niceties that are common in everyday interactions. We had a fight and broke up. But maybe if I go to her place of work with a big romantic gesture, this girl I've only been dating for 3 days will forgive me and we'll get married. You often see a character lift someone off the ground with one arm, their elbow locked, while choking them. In reality, this is practically impossible for most people. The amount of strength required to lift an entire human body with one arm in that position while maintaining a firm grip around their neck would be extraordinary. The physics and biomechanics just don't add up. This is more about creating dramatic tension on screen than anything remotely realistic. Characters often blow up a car by simply shooting the gas tank or the filler cap. In reality, this is highly unlikely. Gasoline isn't explosive on its own, and shooting a gas tank would more likely result in a leak than an explosion. Diesel is even less volatile, making it nearly impossible to ignite with a gunshot. The idea of cars instantly exploding from a single bullet is pure Hollywood fiction, and far from how things would actually play out. Gunfights where the good guys never miss, the bad guys always do and nobody runs out of ammunition. In movies, characters often take a big sip from a coffee cup right after pouring it, without any reaction to the scalding heat or, if it's been sitting, the unpleasant taste of cold coffee. In reality, that first sip would either burn your mouth or make you cringe if it's too cold. The casual way they drink it in films ignores the fact that most of us would either blow on it first or make a face if it's not the right temperature. It's a small detail, but one that always stands out as unrealistic. The average car with an engine in front will go front side down immediately if you jump off a ramp. That Dukes of Hazzard jump would never happen IRL with that car. Always walk through a door without ever getting the doorknob caught on a pocket. In movies, characters often crawl through air ducts to sneak around buildings, but in reality, unless you're the size of a small cat, that's not happening. Most air ducts are far too small and flimsy to support a human's weight, let alone allow someone to move through them. The idea of using air ducts as secret passageways is pure movie fiction and wouldn't work out so smoothly in real life. In movies, characters often have whispery or regular-voiced conversations in a bar where live music is playing, and somehow they can hear each other perfectly. In reality, the noise level in a bar with live music would make it nearly impossible to hear anything unless you're shouting into each other's ears. The idea that you could have a normal conversation in that environment is pure fantasy, making those scenes far less realistic than they appear. Go to bed with makeup on and your hair looking great, and it stays like that when you wake up. Reviving someone who flatlined with CPR and then being totally fine. Knocking someone out by hitting them and then having them wake up later with nothing but maybe a headache. If someone gets hit hard enough to lose consciousness, especially for more than a few moments, they have a concussion, and a severe one at that. They're likely enough to never wake up if they don't get urgent medical attention. Don't f around with concussions, people. Batman doesn't kill people is BS. Probably half the criminals he beat to unconsciousness would have died of their injuries. Batman just doesn't like guns because of his backstory. He'll throw you off a building or beat you to death with barely a second thought. Now, you can cause unconsciousness by briefly compressing the carotid artery, i.e., via a rear naked choke, and as long as you release them as soon as they pass out, they'll generally regain consciousness without complications. Source: have been choked out in judo practice. BC, I didn't tap out in time. It really only takes a matter of seconds if the move is applied precisely. It's common to see a character supporting a family on a single income while comfortably owning a house and car. In reality, this is increasingly difficult for most people, especially with the rising costs of living. The idea of easily maintaining a middle-class lifestyle on one income is more of a nostalgic fantasy than a reflection of today's economic realities. It's a scenario that's becoming less and less attainable in real life. Easily the most immersion-breaking for me, outrunning an explosion. Number. If you were close enough for it to matter, you were dead before you realized it boomed. One thing movies often depict that's impossible in real life is characters dodging bullets after they've been fired. The speed of bullets is so fast that it's impossible for the human eye to track them, let alone react and move out of the way in time. As someone who works in a lab literally every laboratory scene, catching a guy's fist in your hand when he throws a full power punch at you, parry it away? Sure. Catch it like a wiffle ball? Nope. After someone is shot, all you have to do is extract the bullet because according to movie biology, it's the bullet being inside you that's killing you, not the giant hole that the bullet left. A typical scene is that our hero is dying of a bullet wound, but he somehow makes it to some shady underworld doctor who is usually a veterinarian, or a doctor who lost his medical practice license. Then the doctor hands the hero a bottle of whiskey vodka, and our brave hero takes a huge swig of it. The doctor then takes the bottle and pours it on the bullet wound. The hero yells in pain and swears at the doctor. The doctor takes some bend tweezers and starts digging around. The hero may or may not faint from the pain, but finally the doctor holds up a bullet, probably a deformed, unfired bullet, shows it to either the hero or a bystander, then, with a loud clink and a sigh, he drops it into a metal pan. In the next scene, the hero has a bandage but is perfectly fine now. What's a wild story that you'll never forget from high school? One time, some kid let a bunch of chickens loose in the hallways as a prank during senior year. They were running everywhere and it was chaos. Lol took forever for the teachers to catch them all. One time there was a massive fight between the football team and the basketball team in the middle of the cafeteria during lunch. The fight was stopped by the lacrosse team. There was an event in our school, it's Teachers' Day, when a brawl of students happened outside our campus. One of our teachers went outside to stop the brawl when he suddenly grabbed the gun of our school guard, intending to fire a warning shot when he accidentally pulled the trigger, firing it on the ground and hitting one of the students. Sadly, the student reportedly died on the spot. The teacher has been arrested and imprisoned. We had a teacher grab a student by the neck and pin him up against the wall. Instead of getting fired immediately, the school said they would relieve him of his duties at the end of the year. This teacher then took to Twitter and started posting pictures of him self-naked, tagging porn stars and asking them if they would do scenes with him. He then tweeted out a video of him snorting cocaine and piercing his own nipples, again while completely naked. Some students caught on to his Twitter page, and it spread like wildfire the next day around school. About halfway through class, 2 cops walked into the room, picked him up, and carried all the way off the property. I have not heard anything about him after that day. We duct taped the principal's car to a tree. My high school didn't have anything that bad, but the school district I moved to there from was nuts. The biggest story was that a teacher was caught having a lesbian relationship with a student behind her husband's back, and then when the student turned 18, the teacher divorced her husband and then they got married. I think they are still together. Wild. Depends is a drive-by shooting in the school parking lot more or less wild than the shooting threat inside the school. This is one of the major ones, but it was a few years before my time. The teacher's ex-husband arrived at the school armed and ready to murder her. With incredible bravery, this woman was able to get him into a storage area where her class could not see him. After shooting her, he took his own life. She thankfully made it through and was still enrolled in the school. Her son was a student in my year. The science teacher at school discovered me smoking pot. After removing it from me, he requested if I could meet him later in the day. He gave it back to me when I went to his office, saying it was good stuff and asking if I could get him some. I went to military school. There was a lot. One of the TAC officers pulled a gun on a student. He was fired and promptly hired by a rival military school. My English teacher was a Vietnam vet and a biker. Someone stole the knob to his old school radiator in the classroom in like 1975, and he said until he got that exact knob back, he wouldn't turn on the heat and kept the windows open in the winter. He'd be in a short sleeve shirt and we're in our shit jackets freezing our arse off. He kept a bucket by his desk. In it was whatever he felt like putting in it. The chalk dust from his erasers, pencil shavings, spit. He'd let it build up and always threatened to throw the bucket on anybody who fell asleep. I never saw him do it, but there were always rumors he had. What he would do if you fell asleep, though, was kick the bottom of your desk with his biking boots. Hard. Saw him do that a lot. Funny enough, though, he was one of the best teachers I ever had. Dude introduced me to a lot of crazy concepts I'd never been exposed to before. Wild shit happened at that school. I think I'm a little fucked up from going, honestly. China school excursion. A 16-year-old girl from my grade stole some sunglasses from the airport on the day of our return, and she was apprehended by airport security. She did not go home with the others. To save her, her parents had to take a plane from halfway around the globe to China, made the headlines. Girl in my HS had a huge crush on a guy who wasn't single. IDK why she did this, but she sent nudes of herself to the BF. The GF saw them and reported her to the cops for distributing CP because she was only 16 or 17. There was a rumor that some guy fucked a sheep in the ag farm, and she clamped down on him so hard he couldn't get his dick out of her. If you've ever had your hands up a sheep during lambing season, you'll know they can clamp down hard enough to leave your hands black with bruises. No idea if it was true, but the rumor was going strong for years. Mr. King requested suggestions from his students for the name of his upcoming kid. In honor of our recently deceased priest, Father Wayne, I wrote Wayne. After few months, Wayne King was born. I nearly spit out laughing. One wild story from high school that I'll never forget happened during our senior year. Our school had this huge tradition of senior pranks, and one day, our class decided to pull off something epic. We managed to sneak into the school's gym and cover the entire floor with a layer of inflatable pool toys. It was a chaotic mess, but the look on the gym teacher's face when they walked in was priceless. The best part? We all managed to pull it off without getting caught. It's a story we still laugh about every reunion. Our principal tried to do a stunt on stage and he ended up slipping and falling right into the punch bowl. The whole gym went silent for a second, then erupted in laughter. One time we almost blew up the chem lab during an experiment gone wrong. The teacher's face was priceless, but we survived. My high school gym teacher, Mr. T, was boning a girl from the middle school swim team that he coached. It was apparently going on for years and they were hooking up in the school, at parks in the town, at the girl's parents' house and at his house. Dude was married with kids. He used to give all the kids in his classes nicknames. For example, I was the American Dream, my buddy was Sick Boy, etc. He also had his own weird lingo, like instead of saying something was fucked up, he would say, the fugivity levels are off the chart. After realizing he was a pedophile, we started to notice all sorts of red flags, like how he gave my friend Liz the nickname Sexy Liz. Don't know how that didn't raise some questions at the time, LMAO. Also, some dudes stabbed like 20-something kids with 2 chef's knives a couple years after I graduated. Also, there was a crazy chick who wore a fake pregnant woman's belly under her shirt and called in a bomb threat, then got expelled. There was an English teacher no one liked. Everyone knew about her secret stash of whiskey in her drawer she'd sneak pours into her coffee. One time some kids put ipecac in her whiskey. She barfed during class shortly after. The worst, though, was when some kids spiked her coffee with LSD. It was a shit show. She was eventually carried by EMTs into an ambulance. didn't see her the rest of the year. The time this wannabe tough guy was deadlifting in gym class, he was straining so hard he shit his pants and it fell right out his shorts onto the mats. The whole school knew by the end of the day he never lived it down. I went to an expensive private high school full of rich kids. Because of the school's interest in keeping everybody happy and how incredibly privileged some of these kids were, I saw some things that probably would have gotten a person arrested or expelled in other circumstances. The most insane story involved a kid who was frequently the target of a bully. The bully found out that the kid was seriously allergic to peanuts, ate a Reese's peanut butter cup, licked his finger, and then chased the kid around the cafeteria one day, trying to touch him and laughing maniacally. Unfortunately, there wasn't really time for anyone else to react before he was able to tap the kid on the arm with his finger. Kid swelled up like a pufferfish in anaphylaxis and had to go to the ER. Bully got 2 weeks suspension. The kid's parents wanted to press charges, but there was some kind of settlement made, and the whole thing was never spoken of again. 2 female students were found hanged inside a classroom, and the rumor spread that they did it during the night when no one was around. The entire school was shaken by the tragedy, and whispers of the incident circulated for years. It was a haunting event that left everyone on edge, with many students and teachers feeling uneasy every time they entered that classroom. The details of what really happened remained unclear, adding to the mystery and fear surrounding the story. After the dark night came out, a female student went into the bathroom, cut her mouth to look like the Joker, and tried to stab our Spanish teacher. Someone hit her with a chair and got the knife from her. Pretty wild. Lol. We had a bathroom all the way out by the football field. It was one of those cinder block, off yellow-painted jawns. Random day, there was a line of students outside of the bathroom. Turns out there was a girl giving blowjobs in the stalls. Even now I feel like it's a fake story, but I saw the line. I knew people in line, and I know the girl who got caught, the kid who got caught with her. Sad, honestly. When a girl accused my friend and I of trying to rape her when we were at a donut shop across the street from our high school at 7 a.m. because she heard us say, "I'd take that." We were talking about her Ford Mustang. We had no idea she was even in the car or who she was. She was a junior, and we were sophomores, so we'd never met her. We had mutual friends who defended us, saying we'd never do that. Even worse, the police questioned us without our parents there. We were only 16 at the time. We never saw her on campus. She was a Karen in 2002 before it was even a thing. My 6th grade math teacher was arrested for drugs about a year after I left elementary school. It turned out she was using them in her car during lunch hour. Looking back, it made sense why she always seemed so strange after lunch. The news shocked everyone who knew her, and it explained a lot about her odd behavior in the classroom. It was a wild revelation that none of us saw coming. A friend of mine once rollerbladed down a mountain in complete darkness while tripping his balls off, and somehow lived to tell the tale. He made it all the way down, even with traffic on the road. The fact that he didn't crash or get hit is nothing short of a miracle. The guy was absolutely crazy, and it's still one of the wildest stories I've ever heard. We couldn't believe he pulled it off without a scratch. One of the girls who was in the same grade as me and was also in colour guard had had an affair with the band teacher. The news came out soon after graduation, so IDK how long their relationship had been going on, or when it started, or whatever. And I also don't know what happened to the teacher. Oh, and this girl was actually my ex. We dated freshman year, so there's that. Drama nerd brought a gun and pipe bombs to school. There was a girl who ended up pregnant who was a preacher's daughter. Turns out she nailed about 40 guys and told them all they were her first, so it was a massive scramble to find the father. In the end, it was narrowed down to one of her 2 twin brothers. They couldn't figure out which one, since both paternity tests came back positive. After they removed part of a demountable and loaded fireworks within a concrete bin enclosure, 2 individuals were placed on a permanent no-fly list and faced accusations relating to explosives. Since this was Darwin, it was quite easy to get fireworks there. Yet it appeared more difficult to get brains. Someone once jumped down under the pit platform in our theatre and broke their legs trying to get their phone. My best friend and I tried to go coyote hunting once. Turns out we're terrible at it, and all we really wanted to do was wander around a cornfield talking. I'm pretty sure we didn't fire a shot, and I'm certain we didn't see any coyotes. We walked back to his house and decided it would be a good prank to text one another's GFS, telling them we had shot the other. For clarity, he texted my GF, saying something along the lines of, he went crazy and was threatening to shoot me, and when he raised his gun, I shot him. And I sent the same message to his GF. Unfortunately, in our haste to abandon reason, we'd forgotten that my friend's girlfriend's father was the county sheriff. She told him, and he beelined for us. After the scenario had reached a fever pitch and we learned the sheriff was en route, we quickly came clean. Everyone was angry at us for a while, but we never received the reprimand we deserved. I don't plan on ever mentioning it to anyone but my friend, as I don't want anyone else to remember. Secondarily, at my school, we could have parents sign a waiver to allow us to leave the building if we didn't have a class scheduled. A couple friends and I were hanging out in the parking lot, and I'm not really sure what transpired leading up to it, but before we knew it, we'd built a trash fire in one of the empty parking spots. We had no water, so we just kinda hung out until it all burned. If the question had been about middle school, a simple game of Boulder Dash would be my answer. I no longer remember the word prompt, but the definition my group fabricated was a Japanese dildo ice cream. The old man teaching read it clear as day, blushed and said, I think I've just read something inappropriate. It was absolutely fucking hilarious, and the detentions were well worth the laughter of our classmates. A bunch of kids walked into the science classroom to see a girl giving head to her boyfriend. She was also apparently naked, apart from her religious headwear. At another school, a coach had been hooking up with cheerleaders for years. When he finally got caught, instead of facing serious consequences, he received immunity by helping the authorities catch people who were embezzling from the school. It was a shocking twist. Everyone expected him to go down, but instead, he managed to escape punishment by turning in others. The whole situation left a bad taste in everyone's mouth and became a notorious story that stuck with people for a long time. A classmate jumped over the school's fence and ran away from school, made into news headlines. Reason? Because he did something wrong and was scared to meet his parents to face the consequences. Some students got into a fight over a jelly donut one morning. By lunchtime, it had brewed into campus-wide racial tensions. My friends and I were walking to Subway when two plainclothes officers came out of nowhere and ordered us to turn around and get back on campus. During the last 15 minutes of lunch period, the open quad area in the middle of the campus turned into a several hundred student mob. Two sophomore girls, one white and one black, got into a fight, and then their boyfriends jumped in. The agricultural sciences teacher, wearing a Kevlar vest, was drop-kicked. Someone knocked down a cop. Tasers and pepper spray were deployed by the school resource officer and one of the vice principals. I was caught in the middle of one chunk of the crowd when I suddenly heard a loud bullhorn. I turned to see a black and white Chevy Impala screaming across the grass straight at me. City, county, and state swooped in with cars to disperse us. When I got to my next class period, physical education, we were made to sit in the gym and listen for PA announcements. They ended up bringing all the buses in early, and we were called out by our bus number and told to go straight to the bus or face severe consequences. I remember several officers with riot gear and beanbag shotguns telling us to stay on the sidewalks and get straight on the bus. Do not stop, keep moving. We were let out of school for several days, and when we returned, it was never the same. Lunch was cut in half, the campus was closed, and underclasses were permanently separated from the senior classes. The bad kids put LSD in the home ec teacher's coffee, and she had to be escorted out of school having a manic breakdown. My friend got into a prestigious boarding school, so we had a feast in the cafeteria to send them off. Complete with a tablecloth, china, candles, with paper flames taped on, a rotisserie chicken that ended up getting thrown over the crowds down the hallway during the transition, and other stuff. Saddest one? 2 brothers, youngest murdered the oldest, and their mother. My friend, who is best friends with the older brother, is the one who found their bodies. It was so tragic, I honestly feel it would be disrespectful to say more. Grossest, me and my dumb group of friends went into school grounds middle of night. At one point climbed the water supply tower, and when we found the padlock extremely easy to break, my friend promptly took a shit in it. We had a teacher fucking students. The kids who rather her out got suspended for lying. 6 months later, she gets arrested for fucking a 15-year-old. The quarterback, who was a giant arsehole, mind you, the most arrogant piece of crap that everyone loved, but he bullied others, especially those who didn't like sports and thought they were pointless. I remember seeing him blind with rage and tears, with his girlfriend consoling him, complaining about someone who ranted at him that his life's high point was only ever going to be high school and he's going nowhere in life, and ranted off chances of him making a living off of football, how no one likes him, they are just afraid of him or feel sorry for him. The older people are kissing his ass because of a blind love of football, and how pointless his life is going to be, even if he does get into the NFL. A few weeks later, I found out how shit his grades were. The water bottle he always carried around was filled with vodka. He was caught and suspended from football for a while, and from what I learned, his parents are rich, but he flunked out of college, however he got in, and was an abusive prick. When a classmate of mine jumped from the rooftop of our school. Every Halloween, our high school threw a Halloween night dance for the students in the gymnasium that featured Halloween decorations and music, food, drinks, no alcohol for obvious reasons, candy, a chocolate fountain, and of course, dancing. Well, during this one particular Halloween dance, I think I was in the 10th or 11th grade, a group of teenagers who went to my high school decided it would be a good idea to smoke weed. They brought themselves outside the school in an area by the gymnasium. They got busted by one of chaperones, who noticed the smell and went outside to check as a couple exit doors were left open to cool down the gym, as it had gotten pretty warm in there. Later on, a fight broke out as someone had gotten intoxicated from drinking beer they'd sneaked in themselves and had made an offensive comment. Don't remember what it was. Cops got called and, well, they broke up the fight and some people got arrested, including the pothead teenagers and the guy who got drunk. The next day, we got a lecture from the teachers and principals about the dangers of marijuana and alcohol, and how it was unacceptable the way the dance went the previous night. As a result, they announced that that Halloween dance would be the last Halloween dance they ever threw because of what could happen. Everyone was upset, but more so at the pothead teens and the guy that got drunk. Here's the kicker. I didn't know anything about the events that unfolded at the dance as I hadn't attended. I only found out when we got that lecture. Man, those were good old days of high school. What small choice you made changed your life? My dad asked me to go with him to take my sister to dance one morning. I wasn't dressed and it's boring, so said no. They died in a car crash on the way home. I think about it that about 100 times a day. Decided to take a different route home one day and stumbled upon a little coffee shop. Met the owner, got to talking, and ended up with a job offer. That job led to a career shift I never planned, but absolutely love. All because I was bored of my usual commute and craved a different view. Proof that sometimes the scenic route really does pay off. Pity instead of anger. I used to have some severe anger issues. Just angry at everything and everyone. Everything pissed me off. Everyone aggravated me. I had a therapist that worked with me on a meditation technique of pondering the things that pissed me off or made me angry the most, and then working from the anger to pity. For instance, I held on to deep-rooted and very justified anger towards my dad. In my meditation, when I would think about my dad and childhood, and as my thoughts and memory wandered and I felt myself getting angry, I would refocus my thoughts to pity for him. He has severe mental illnesses. he is probably lost in his own chaos of a mind and is always feeling alone and angry at himself, changing the thoughts from animosity and anger to pity and feeling sorry for him. After a couple decades of this practice, it has become the default thought process. When I see someone doing something shitty, my first thoughts are no longer what a piece of shit or I hate it when people do that, but now is, I wonder what drove them to this, or that must be horrible for them to live that way and think that way. I am a much happier person now and have much healthier social interactions with pity and empathy rather than anger and fear. Less than soda consumption and ditching it entirely, my belly gradually disappeared. I was sitting at my friend's bar while he was printing up a help wanted sign. I hadn't done service industry in 20+ years, but I had just spent 4 years unemployed because I was taking care of my failing parents, and I really didn't want to go back to the tech industry. I told him I wished I could work for him. He said, "You can, just come in tomorrow and fill out paperwork." Later that evening, I texted him, "Were you serious?" And he replied, "Come in tomorrow." Been there for 8+ years now, it's the best job I've ever had. Even my therapist says it's the best thing I've done for my mental health. When my granddad died years ago, he left behind his journal. It was basically a diary. My dad read it through and through, and when my first son was born, my dad gave it to me. Now, inside the journal, he wrote many things spanning years. But one common thread was him writing a phrase, "Gotta find the light." This explained many things, in particular why he was such a kind and positive person. No matter the situation, no matter what bad thing happened, he'd always find a way to find something good or funny about it. His cab broke down. Now I can get another one. My grandma passed away. She's with God now. Bet he's better company. A dog bit his leg. Now he knows what spicy Negro tastes like. So, I started trying to find the light. And this skill helped me get over so many hurdles in my life. Basic training was hell. I'm going to be so much stronger after this. My dog, best friend, all through my childhood, passed away due to old age. At least he's not suffering now. My oldest son broke my church warden. Well, he's got an interest in Dad's things. My wife often says that she depends on my positivity because she's a realist and a negative person. She'll rest her head on my lap and tell me all black clouds over her head. And like the sun, I'll burst right through and offer a positive ray or two. And I gotta admit, seeing a smile poke through her pessimistic outlook because I found a bit of light in a dark place feels pretty good. Sure, things may get dark. But there's always a bit of light, however tiny, if you just find it. Thank you, Grandad. Stop having a messy room. I swear having a clean room will give you an overall more positive and motivated mindset. 25 years old, working as a waitress and bartender for 5 years, went down to the local community college one late August day to just get some information about how to become a nurse. Sat down and talked with the professor, who before I could even think about it or change my mind, signed me up on the spot, and a year later, boom, I was an LPN. Fast forward 6 years later, I was an RN. Now it's 30 years later and I'm still at it. But it gave me a good life and the ability to save for retirement, hopefully in 18 months. Switching to drinking only water and tea was a small choice that made a huge difference in my life. Cutting out soda completely left me feeling so much better, both physically and mentally. My energy levels are more stable. I've lost weight, and I don't miss the sugary drinks at all. It's amazing how such a simple change can have such a positive impact on your overall well-being. Choosing to attend a local networking event seemed like a small decision at the time, but it ended up being life-changing. I unexpectedly connected with someone there who later offered me a job opportunity that completely transformed my career. It's incredible how one seemingly minor choice can lead to such significant outcomes. That event opened doors I never anticipated. A friend asked if I wanted to go for a drive with him to pick up his friend from college. I had nothing better to do, so I said yes. I ended up marrying his friend's roommate. Sitting at a table opposite of a 13-year-old boy when I was 12. I waved at him with my stuffed teddy bear to say hi because the boy looked bored. 41 years later, I'm typing this as he sleeps quietly next to me. Life has been a wild ride, but that remains one of the most impacting choices I will ever make in life. Tit next to the blonde guy in college, we've formed a company now. Giving up drugs and alcohol, while my social life has gotten a little more boring, it's nice not feeling fried or hungover from substances, and I feel my brain healing. Edit. Becoming a mom to my stepkids when I began dating their dad. Their biological mom had sadly passed away a few months prior, and when I began dating their dad, the second I first held them, they were 4 months old when I met them. Something awoke in my heart. To this day, they're now 16 and I'm still with their dad. They don't refer to me as their stepmom, they just call me mom. But they know the truth of what happened to their biological mother. I was engaged at 24, we called it off a mutual decision. She went on to eventually marry and have 2 kids and raised a beautiful family. I moved out of state, worked for 3 beverage companies that all ended up getting bought. Not retirement money, but allowed me to travel, live in full amenity lofts in downtowns and go to every concert festival I wanted. I realized I wasn't the family person and glad we didn't get in a situation that would have been detrimental to everyone, especially if we got married and had kids. Less people-pleasing. It was hard but worth the effort. I agreed to help score a cricket match just after COVID because I was going crazy stuck in my house. I was terrible at it, but came back the next week anyway. Now I have a whole new group of people who are fun and supportive and challenge me to do more and better things. I was in such a dark place before, and now I have a whole future and a big group of friends. It sounds so silly, but just saying yes to that one thing got me out of a rut and back on a beautiful path. 24 years ago, I decided to get coffee before a job interview, which put me in the situation of a car accident. I missed my interview appointment, so I applied at the restaurant where I was waiting for the tow truck. The manager hired me on the spot, and on my first night, I met another server who told me that when I walked in, he told the manager he was going to marry me. 1 year later, my oldest son was born. I think of this often. Every day we wake up and our whole lives can change. Sometimes a blessing, other time a curse, but it creates a sense of adventure to acknowledge this and be curious every day. Who knows, maybe missed interview is the greatest thing that will ever happen to you. Deciding to take that random job offer was a small choice that ended up shaping my entire life. It led to everything else: new opportunities, important connections, and even life-changing experiences. Looking back, it's incredible how that one decision set the course for so much that followed. Sometimes the choices you make on a whim turn out to be the most impactful. Choosing to eat to live instead of living to eat. Deciding to skip that one party and study instead. No sodas, cutting out beer, bread and flour products, biking 5 miles a day. I feel a difference in my waistline and my new ring is already loose on me. Well, earlier this year, I got an ADHD diagnosis and now have just began meds. I'm in my mid-20s and have lost a good chunk of my early adulthood to PTSD and no treatment. I hope this is the turn of a new leaf. Deciding to take that random road trip on a whim was a small choice that ended up having a huge impact on my life. It led to unforgettable experiences, new friendships, and even a shift in my perspective on life. That spontaneous decision opened doors to opportunities I never would have encountered otherwise. Sometimes the best things happen when you just go with the flow. Picture this. It's 1995. I'm a language nut, so my geeky friend tells me about this internet chat program called IRC, where I can talk to anyone around the world. He gives me the diskette with the program on it and promises he'll come online after school to show me how to use it. I ask him how I'll know he's there, and he says he'll go by some generic nickname. I go home, install the program, get signed on, and start looking for my friend. I see someone with this generic nickname on a chat channel for people around the world. Excellent. Not only have I found my friend, I've found a channel of people to chat with. I join and start talking, but quickly realize this person is not my friend. A nice German guy offers to show me how to use the program, in his very basic English. We connect every day when I get home from school. He wants to practice English. He works night shifts, so it works out well. We meet in person when I graduate from high school in the late 90s. We've been married 21 years. I think deciding to change my attitude is what made a big difference in my life. I decided to put a positive spin on life and try to be happier. It might sound stupid, but life is an attitude, and a person can decide if they want to be miserable or happy. Reduce my alcohol intake. I always drink water at a bar and can still have a great night. Stay hydrated the whole night and can get home sober and safe. The best part is I can remember the night and how fun it was. I don't know how small of a choice, but I was standing in a room full of people and looked through the door. And like tunnel vision, I saw my future wife. I didn't know her. She was a little blonde, just looking at me stirring her drink in a black dress. That was in February. We were married in July, and we are still going 28 years strong. As the doctors have told us, she has maybe 23 months left. Cancer is a horrible thing. I don't regret a minute of our lives together. Stop caring what people think so much. Everyone's going to have an opinion of you, and you can't please everyone. Saying one thing when talking with my friend while severely tired, due to which we ended up confessing to each other and starting dating. Said friend has been an absolutely fantastic GF, and I would not trade the world for her. Alternatively, me deciding to send her a message that led to us starting talking and eventually dating. I was backpacking through South America when I met two girls from Germany. Originally, I had planned to visit Machu Picchu and then stay in Cusco for 4 days. In the bus to Machu Picchu, I met them and really clicked with one of them. When I heard they were going straight to Lima, I said, "Oh yeah, I was planning on leaving the same day." We all booked tickets together and got to keep hanging out. 9 years older, we are married and have 2 kids. September 20th, 1980. Sunday morning in Pennsylvania. Bored, went to store and did an impulse buy of the Sunday New York Times. There was a 4x5 want ad that screamed I was qualified. I prepared a resume, sent it in. Took train to NYC for interview, not expecting much as I was in no way near a NYC-type person. Offered the job on that first interview. Doubled my then salary. I lied about how much I was making. Retired 26 years later. All because of one boring Sunday. Quit smoking cigarettes. No regrets. I used to go to an alternative high school away from all the friends I grew up with. I was also working a part-time construction job while going to school. One day we got rained out on the job site and I got off work early. I was near my old high school and decided to swing by and say hi to my friends during lunch. One of the school principals noticed me and asked what I was doing there. I was not allowed on school grounds since I was no longer a student and was asked to leave. I made up this BS story about how I was really there to transfer back to that school and they said, "Oh, you need to speak to counsellor so-and-so," and left me alone. Anyways, lunch ends. I said bye to my friends and head over to the vending machines to grab a pop on my way out. As I'm heading out the front door, this guy approaches me and introduces themselves as the counsellor the principal mentioned. I followed him into his office and he gave me a list of everything I needed to do to transfer back to my original high school. I literally studied my arse off and got all my high school credits caught up, transferred back to my original high school the last 6 months of 12th grade and graduated with a regular high school diploma with all my friends. There were a few things that happened that day that kind of all culminated together, but yeah, definitely a day I look back on and think about often. I always run the dishwasher when I wake up. Small task, and it sets a productive tone to the whole day. A friend of mine jokingly put a profile of me on an internet dating site. When I found out, I went on to delete it and found a message in the profile inbox. Figured I'd be polite and answer explaining the situation. In September, we have our 6th wedding anniversary. Deciding not to use social media that isn't anonymous was a small choice that made a big difference in my happiness. Without the pressure to maintain a curated online presence, I feel more relaxed and authentic. It's been freeing to avoid the comparisons and drama that often come with traditional social media, and I am much happier focusing on real-life connections and anonymous interactions instead. Downloading an app called Lose It to track calories right before COVID hit went from 216 to 177 pounds in about a year. Giving up alcohol. 3 years sober and my mental health has completely transformed. Choosing to start sleeping early and waking up early was a small change that transformed my life. By getting a full night's rest and starting my day earlier, I've noticed a significant boost in both my health and productivity. I feel more energized throughout the day, my focus has improved, and I'm able to get more done without feeling overwhelmed. This simple adjustment to my routine has had a ripple effect, improving not just my physical well-being, but also my mental clarity and overall happiness. It's amazing how something as basic as adjusting your sleep schedule can have such a profound impact on your life. Stopping drinking alcohol was a small decision that had a huge impact on my life. Without it, I feel clearer, more focused, and my overall health has improved significantly. I have more energy, better sleep, and I'm more present in my relationships and daily activities. The benefits of this choice have been far-reaching, and I'm so much happier and healthier because of it. I skipped a meal because I was super busy at work. When I finally did eat, I realized it had been 16 hours since my last meal. I felt great that day and decided to do it again the next day. On the third day, I realized that my clothing were a bit loose. I had dropped 3 pounds by skipping one meal. From that point on, I kept on with intermittent fasting. I have dropped 22 pounds in 5 weeks. A different parking spot. One night in 2020, I had just gotten home from the gym and parked in my usual spot in front of my house. But as I was about to turn off the car, something caught my eye. A small fawn darted across the road and disappeared into the ditch. It was strange because we don't usually see deer around our property, and it was late in the season for such a young fawn. I considered backing into my regular spot, but suddenly felt too exhausted to bother. So I threw the car into park and went inside to get my daughter ready for bed. The next day, a Monday, I was home with my daughter, enjoying some time in the garden while she played in the sprinkler. I walked inside for a moment and happened to glance at the TV, which was tuned to the local news. The weatherman was warning about severe weather, 90-mile-per-hour winds headed our way. I looked outside and saw the sky had turned a dark, ominous color, and a massive wall of clouds was rolling towards us. I rushed to get my daughter and secure the yard, but we could feel the wind picking up. As we headed to the basement, we heard a loud crack, and it felt like the whole house shook. We rode out the storm in the basement, listening to the wind howl outside. When it finally calmed, I went upstairs to check the damage. The massive maple tree next to our house had fallen, blocking the front entrance. I ran outside expecting to see my car crushed under the tree. But somehow it was untouched. The tree had just missed it by a few feet. It hadn't damaged our old boat or the porch either, just taking out an old yew bush I'd never liked. That moment made me realize how close we'd come to disaster. If I had parked in my usual spot, my car would have been totaled. If the tree had fallen a little to the left, we might not have been so lucky. It reminded me of the unpredictable nature of life and how things often unfold as they should. I'm filled with gratitude for that small, seemingly insignificant decision to park a little differently that night. It may have saved us from something far worse. Go to a doctor really early. I was diagnosed with a cancer. Choosing to say yes to a spontaneous road trip led to unforgettable adventures and meeting lifelong friends. I let a Tinder date look through my other matches, she messaged the woman I'm engaged to now. I started expecting nothing from anybody and never gave a fuck about what they think of me. Friend in first period told me that we could skip second period if we went to a visiting college recruiters talk. It was her dream school. Tagged along to skip class. Ended up getting a 4-year scholarship there and pretty sure it helped me land my competitive first job since one of the interviewers was a fellow alum and we talked football. I broke up with a girl and was nearly moved to another state to live with friends and start over before meeting my now wife in a club one night. We just celebrated our 27th year of marriage earlier this month. In high school, I actively trained myself to stop saying, "Oh, I'm dumb," whenever I made a little mistake or missed something obvious. If I ever did say it through force of habit, I would immediately turn around and say, "No, you're not dumb." I don't think I knew at the time how important that was or how that would serve me later in life, but I am so grateful to that oftentimes more confident version of myself. No one gave me the idea to do that. I just thought on my own that I shouldn't be talking to myself like that, and I still don't. What are hints that women give that most men don't pick up on? I had a co-worker girl ask me one time if I could help her move her bed, which I thought was odd. It's pretty doable with one person. I get to her house and she has like an 18-year-old brother. I was like, why didn't you ask him to help? I moved the bed, then left. The next day at work, I had some girlfriends ask, did I get lucky? I was confused and said no, I just moved her bed for her and left. They all laughed at me, ha ha ha. If I keep glancing down at the pickles sitting on your plate that you're not eating, I want it. I once got yelled by my female co-worker. She said, "Haven't you noticed that for the last 2 months, the first thing I do when I arrive is come to your desk and say hello, and that I don't do that for anyone else?" I honestly hadn't noticed. I did notice she always arrived later than me. That is the only thing I had noticed. Honestly. Anyway, after that little bit of frustration and yelling, we did end up having a thing for a while. I once asked a guy if I could kiss him. We had been hanging out in a way that was conducive to that, and he said yes. I kissed him. It was great. But then we just parted ways naturally. 3 days later, this man called me all shocked that I was hitting on him. He told a friend about the interaction, and they had to point it out. "Sir, I literally kissed you." All of them. Seriously, if you're a man like me, I'm terrible at hints. She'd have to explicitly tell me that she likes me, wants to be with me, and even then, I'd be scared that I'm getting pranked, because that's happened to me before. Literally anything that isn't "let's have sex" right now. And even then, I would think I'm getting scammed. I've messed up so many interactions with women, it's silly. The only one that I understood she was hitting on me was the time my roommate and I threw a New Year's Eve party. I was sitting on the couch with a drink talking to people when a chick I've never met before, or since, comes over, takes the drink out of my hand. She then cuddled in next to me and put my arm around her. At that point, I was like, okay, this is different, but good. Then she does something I couldn't miss to indicate she was interested. She put my hand down her shirt, in her bra, and on her right boob. To say I was shocked was an understatement. A sizable number of guys don't want to come off as being creepy or overly forward. The result is that people of this sort will see a clear hint and brush it off as they probably don't mean it that way. Anecdotally, back in high school, a pretty girl sat next to me for about 2 weeks at lunch and would make comments like, "I could really see myself with someone like you," while also being exceptionally handsy. I naturally assumed she didn't mean literally me and just thought, neat. I guess I'm not hopeless after all. After she realized that I wasn't being very responsive to her hints, she just stopped joining me at lunch. Ladies, if you're reading this and you've got your eye on a fella, just go ahead and be blunt about it. We are incredibly dense at the best of times. We won't think you're weird. We won't think you're a creep. Keeping the conversation short, no intention in prolonging the conversation at all. After a thorough analysis of this thread, I've concluded that both men and women are terrible at this. I was about to comment that I have never even been hit on. But then I realized the problem at hand. The reason I smiled at you is not because I like you, it's just simple kindness. When I was younger, I had a girl over a few times to watch DVDs. We never had anything physical except she started to ask for a massage, and also give one, after every movie. She took off her shirt and unzipped the bra so I can get everywhere on her back. And I just massaged her back until it was her turn to massage me, which she also did every time. After the 5th date when I was done massaging, she sat up and forgot to close the bra and turned my way and said playfully, "Oh, you, OFC?" You would stare. I turned away, apologized, and turned away. Do I have to mention this was the last time I saw her? Sometimes I want to invent a time machine just to travel back and slap my teenage self in the face. Hard. I once went on a New Year's Eve with a girl to see fireworks. We get to kiss cheeks as sort of good luck, but also because I was hesitating to kiss her lips. Then we went home and it was winter, so it was quite cold, and my hands were freezing because I forgot to bring gloves. She offered to put my hands into her body inside the shirt near almost breast. It was quite good and GL, also the warmth. I walked her to her place and told her that I like her, but she said she didn't like me. I was flirting my arse off with a guy I met at work. I would always randomly brush his hand or arm, make extended smiling eye contact or whatever. I never went in for the hug because, hey, it was the workplace. Turns out he was picking up those signals, but he didn't believe them. He's a good friend of my roommate who's a gay woman. Because I live with her, he thought I was her girlfriend. That changed when we all went out to a social event after work and her actual girlfriend showed up. That's when he learned I was straight and single. We were dating by the next week, and now we're engaged. Squeak. The problem with hints is that they rarely mean one thing. Or maybe to the woman they mean one specific thing. But that's only because she's the only one privy to her chain of reasoning. The one she's speaking to doesn't have that benefit. So to him, she could be saying one of many things. And there's a risk associated with some of the interpretations. Sometimes men do indeed fail to pick up on subtle hints. But that's just because that's now how we communicate in general. Men are taught to be direct. Women are taught to be more subtle. Other times, men are being cautious and deliberately choose the safer option. No one wants to come off as creepy or ruin a friendship by misinterpreting a comment or friendly gesture as flirting. Also, it's not like all women use the same hints and have those words or actions mean the same thing. Some women expect men to think like them, so their hint is understand my language by repeating to speak in that language of not direct communication. Funny, because when I want to communicate with someone from UK, I don't start talking in Swahili. Ever since the Me Too movement, most guys have been more conscious of not reading friendliness as interest. Which is not to say I am against the Me Too movement. I am glad women are feeling more comfortable coming forward with their stories. Also, I am glad men are being more respectful of women. That said, a side effect is men are even less likely to act on hints now. We don't want to be the creep who misread friendliness as interest and ruin a friendship or make a friend group awkward. Also, one girl's hint is another girl's friendliness. It's hard for us to keep track. Some girls hug everyone, some girls don't. Some girls smile a lot and make lots of eye contact. Some don't. Doesn't have to be a let's fuck right now. It can be a simple, hey, do you want to grab lunch? Just you and me. And if that goes well and he doesn't pick up on it, you can follow it up with, I had a good time with you. Want to go on a real date sometime? Guys are, for the most part, direct about things. If you want us to understand, again, for the most part, be direct. That's the language we speak. A woman could have a genuine conversation with me, and I wouldn't pick up on the hint, because the conversation or things she says is quite literally what a lot of other girls say. Those girls were not interested. You get so used to thinking that just because a girl looks interested, it doesn't mean she actually is. Not to mention the risk of being labelled a creep if you make a risky gamble. A woman could smile, laugh, have an open body posture, ask about my life, and I'd still think she's just normally like that. Ever have one of those cringe moments that haunts you for the rest of your life? Yeah, this one still makes me wince. Granted, in my defense, I was 15 and had never touched a titty before. My first girlfriend throughout freshman year never wanted to do anything more than kiss, so when I started dating my second girlfriend the next year, I thought that was normal. We were making out hot and heavy every unsupervised second we got together, but that was it. One day she came over on a day when my mom wasn't home, in a low-cut top that plunged down between her tits. As we're making out, my innocent, naive ass thought, uh-oh, better be extra careful where my hands go. In the middle of making out, she stops, looks me in the eye and softly purrs, "Where is my heart?" I panic and very carefully, nervously, tap a single careful finger on her sternum, making sure I didn't touch either breast. She literally rolled her eyes and went, "Ugh!" Pulled her top down and her tits out, grabbed my hand firmly and placed it on her tit, staring me in the eye firmly. I had a second of confused panic, like, I'm not supposed to do that. And then realization hit me like, oh. Yeah, I still cringe at my naivety. One girl could be dancing and grinding on you naked at a party, but the moment you try and make a move, she'll be like, WTF, bro, we're just friends. Another girl could offer you her half-eaten Subway chips, you'll eat them, move on, and she'll think, WTF, bro, I obviously wanted to suck your dick. Good luck out there, my fellow men. If a woman is in a job where she's serving you, the customer, and being friendly, cheerful, smiling and making eye contact with you, she doesn't want to bang you. It's her job to be nice to literally everyone. Men are simple creatures. We don't get hints. The second date I had with my wife, we were sitting in my truck just chatting a little, and she climbed on top of me, took off her shirt and bra, and just started making out with me. It was awesome. I thanked her, and I immediately drove her home. It was until years later that she told me she wanted to have sex with me on our second date. I had no idea. For years. All of them. Stop playing games and wasting everyone's time. My 32-year-old wife is a mother of two. When she joined this new company, she suddenly changed the wardrobe to more sexy clothes. She used to wax her legs regularly and shave down there. She would tell me that people would be surprised when she tells she has 2 kids, and she looks like a college kid. Turns out she was emotionally cheating with a male colleague 8 years junior who was wooing her with how gorgeous she looked, etc., and might have ended physical had my spidey senses told me to check her mobile chats. Even when a girl rammed her tongue down my throat, most guys will be like, maybe she just want to be friends. Caused by girls that keeps male best friend around for years while he's clearly into her. One false misinterpreted signal and you could face accusations in most jurisdictions. Guys simply sucking at reading hints, so guys will tend to play possum unless there is a neon sign, and even there, we'll proceed with caution. Many women feel that they constantly drop hints, but they often go unnoticed. This can lead to frustration. Some believe that instead of hinting, they should be more direct about what they want or need. It's a simple shift, but it could prevent misunderstandings. They might say something like, I wish I didn't have to hint all the time, which is a clear sign they'd prefer more straightforward communication. This way, there's no guessing involved, and it makes things much clearer for everyone involved. Many women feel that they constantly drop hints, but they often go unnoticed. This can lead to frustration. Some believe that instead of hinting, they should be more direct about what they want or need. It's a simple shift, but it could prevent misunderstandings. They might say something like, I wish I didn't have to hint all the time, which is a clear sign they'd prefer more straightforward communication. This way, there's no guessing involved, and it makes things much clearer for everyone involved. I refuse to see all of them. Stop wasting my time, communicate like a mature person. As men, we often miss subtle hints because we're not wired to notice them. It's not that we're ignoring them on purpose, we just don't always catch those small signals. Women might expect us to understand what they mean without saying it directly, but the reality is, we often don't. This difference in communication can lead to confusion and missed connections. It's a bit like trying to decode a message in a language we're not fluent in. It's there, but we just don't get it. If you say something suggestive that a woman doesn't acknowledge or pretends not to hear, or causes her to subtly change the subject, don't then say it again. What, do they think that we just went temporarily deaf? You were being given an out. ITT. Men hoping to hear hints women give them that they want to sleep with them. Actually ITT. Women saying how often they give men hints to fuck off. Don't give us hints. Talk to us. Be blunt. I promise you that we can handle it. Trying to respond to ambiguous hints and not providing the answer you're trying to dig out of is probably going to elicit an awkward, if not creepy, response if there's a misinterpretation. Loneliness is a bitch, but it's light years better than being thought of as creepy. And playing hard to get is dumb. No really does mean no to the majority of guys, and it's a really easy way to get us to try elsewhere. Hints don't work. The risks are too high to take anything seriously. If a guy responds and he's wrong, she could raise the issue to a dean or HR, and he loses his scholarship or his job. My mother drilled into me even before high school. Don't think about women that way. They don't want what men want, and touching a woman could end everything. The only reason I'm not single is because my wife kissed me in a way that made me realize she wasn't just a friend. There was a girl I really liked in high school. I took her to a movie premiere I won tickets to. We hung out all the time. She would often sit on my lap on the bus on the way home from school, even when there were seats available. It took 15 years and me telling my current girlfriend about her for me to understand that yes, this girl was in fact interested in me. Some of us are clueless idiots when it comes to this stuff. Subtle hints like lingering eye contact, playful teasing, or small, thoughtful gestures often go unnoticed. Women might also drop hints about their likes and dislikes or share personal stories to gauge interest. In today's world, where clear consent is crucial, hints simply don't carry the weight they once might have. Hints can be vague, misinterpreted, or completely missed, which is why explicit and honest communication is so important. It's not about being dense, it's about ensuring everyone is on the same page, especially when it comes to matters of consent. In situations where clarity is essential, relying on hints is risky and can lead to serious misunderstandings. That's why many believe hints have lost their place. They don't hold up when things get serious. Hints are a crapshoot. I'm not going to risk acting upon a hint just to be snagged into a potentially dangerous situation. If you want to talk to me, just come out and do it. Start a dialogue. Worst case scenario, the conversation ends. I'll grant the same approach and understand if it's time to say farewell or ask to meet again. All of them, because I've been wrong before. And I'm not the type to take eye contact and a smile laugh for flirting either. I've been certain there was flirting, just for them to tell me they're not actually interested in pursuing something. So I make a point to tell people in my life in general that I really require and appreciate direct communication. And I am very direct with others. In a nice way, of course. And honestly, people usually seem to really appreciate it. I'm talking to a woman and have been the past several weeks. I asked her out, and we've been on a few dates and multiple casual hangouts, so I checked in to see what she was feeling and told her I have no expectations other than communicating. Seemed to be a relief, because she was really burned by her most recent relationship and needs time to actually know how she feels. So we're just going to continue hanging out and communicating. She knows I'm interested, but that it's also okay that she's not sure. And if she decides she'd rather be friends, she knows we'd both be happy with that, because I told her so. I get that some people like the flirting games, but personally, I love taking the guesswork out of things and just talking like adults. Subtle clues such as extended eye contact, light-hearted teasing, or modest, considerate actions frequently go missed. Women may also give suggestions about their likes and dislikes, or offer personal anecdotes to evaluate interest. I remember helping a girl out in college. She was in my car, just us two. She wanted to date a guy just like me, kind, funny, courteous, good-looking. So I mentioned guys we know. How about Dave? He's always nice and friendly. Kyle, you said he was cute. Thomas, he's smart and funny. Each guy she rejected. I listed off like 6 guys. Finally, I said, that's about all the guys I know like me. She mutters something and says, never mind, gets out and slams the car door hard. Odd. Don't get mad at me for not knowing other guys like me. 2 years later, I realize, wait, I'm like me. One day, women might realize that men don't interpret things the same way they do. For example, when a woman gives a long, intense stare, many men might assume it's a challenge or even an invitation to conflict rather than a sign of interest. The different ways men and women communicate can often lead to these kinds of misunderstandings. Most hints women give are way too subtle or too much in their head that men can't pick up. Women are extremely bad when it's time to seduce a men. They are great to be attractive but have zero skill to approach men, so hint are often not pick up. Women hint are more like not hint at all than what they think it is. Pretty much all of them. Even being blunt doesn't work for a lot of us because of the sheer number of times interest in us has been used as a weapon. Growing up through high school, the idea of dating me was the butt of a lot of jokes. Girls would feign interest, then bounce because it was fun to make me think I could have a chance. So I tuned it all out. I stopped paying attention because up till then it was all fake, all a joke, all a dig. I couldn't even discuss crushes with friends because word would eventually get out and the mockery would begin. One time I showed up to school surprised to find out from admin and law enforcement that I apparently said I wanted to assault a girl. News to me. Looking back, I ultimately missed out on a lot of potential options because of it from girls who weren't doing that, but because of trauma, I wasn't able to see it. All I could see was the mockery, the lies, the sadness and shame. To this day, a woman can basically ask me out at a bar, and I would 99% just stare at them with a, "Are you fucking for real?" face, completely unable to answer because the past. I'm even in a relationship, and when she says I want to fuck you, I go, wait, is this a joke? Ladies, y'all don't realize how much damage your younger selves do to boys, and it's biting many in the arse now. What's something most people don't realize will kill you in seconds? Large herbivores. They've evolved defenses to make large predators rethink their life choices. They will mess you up. Enclosed spaces, don't assume it's the air you're used to down there. One simple wrong move on the highway. Hey, that small invertebrate you found by the sea, please leave it alone. Falling from a regular standing height might not seem dangerous, but it can be surprisingly lethal. A simple trip or slip can result in a head injury or a bad fall that causes internal bleeding, especially in older adults or those with brittle bones. The impact on the head, even from just standing height, can cause brain trauma or a fatal injury if not treated immediately. It's something most people don't think about, but it's a serious risk that can turn deadly in a matter of seconds. This is why falls are a leading cause of injury-related deaths, particularly in the elderly. Water. People often do not respect water and how it can quickly kill you. Things under huge amounts of tension. Boat lines, garage door springs, various other cables or springs used in industrial settings. These can send you back to the character select in an instant. Capacitors. Maybe most people don't interact with them, but for those that do, DIY electronics repairs, a typical PSU in a home computer have capacitors that can kill you. Shocking, I know. A fistfight might seem like a momentary burst of anger, but it can quickly turn deadly. One wrong punch, especially to the head or neck, can cause catastrophic injury, leading to death. It's easy to underestimate the force behind a punch, but the human body is more fragile than we often realize. If someone dies as a result of that punch, it could mean facing manslaughter charges and ending up in prison for years. What starts as a heated argument can end in tragedy, altering lives forever in just a few seconds. Carbon dioxide. People have died playing with dry ice. Texting while driving. So I was trying to look up a DIY mixture to remove mold mildew recently. A surprising number of sources, including an AI tool, suggested mixing bleach and vinegar. Inhalants. I tried them once in high school. 2 weeks later, a kid at another school died from using them the first time. A couple weeks after that, I was offered them again. I told them fuck no and asked if they hadn't heard about the dead kid. They looked at me and seriously replied, "Oh yeah, it's okay. He used the wrong brand. He used the blue bottle instead of the purple bottle." Horses, we've lived with them for so long that unless you spend regular time around them, you don't know just how unbelievably dangerous they are. It's a good thing they're so stupid, or we'd be fucked. Movies have people believing they're these docile creatures that live to serve humans. Those are the ones that have been trained extensively. They are otherwise 1,500 pounds of dumb, panicky hair trigger muscle. Carbon monoxide. Well, minutes, but still. It's odorless and colourless. Most likely you won't even know. Hitting your head against a wall. There's a pretty famous story about a basketball player who missed a shot, got annoyed and headbutted, if I remember correctly, the post the hoop is attached to. Didn't kill him but paralysed him from the neck down for life. People do die from doing this. I've seen people get mad and headbutt something 100 times, but do it wrong once and that's it, you're dead. Edit. He made the shot, but was called out, got a foul so it didn't count. He died 13 years later. Someone has replied with a video link, but watch at your own discretion, it's not nice. Brake checking a semi-truck is incredibly dangerous. Yet some people don't realise just how deadly it can be. When a semi is forced to brake suddenly, its massive size and weight make it nearly impossible to stop quickly. The truck can easily plough into the vehicle in front, crushing it instantly. This reckless act can lead to devastating accidents, often with fatal outcomes. It's shocking that some drivers don't see the obvious risk, but it only takes a split second to cause a tragedy. Garage door springs are under extreme tension, and many people don't realise just how dangerous they can be. If one of these springs snaps while you're trying to fix it, the force can be lethal, causing severe injury or even death in an instant. That's why it's crucial to let a professional handle any repairs involving garage door springs. It's not worth the risk of trying to do it yourself, as the consequences can be catastrophic in just a matter of seconds. Slipping in the shower. Mixing a lot of stuff with benzos, alcohol, opiates, other benzos, etc. Edit. Damn, this blew up. You all stay safe. You can recover and get help. A family friend who taught me how to drive many years ago told me you have to drive like everyone else on the road is an absolute idiot and has no idea what they're doing. I never forgot that. A ruptured aneurysm can kill you in seconds. It's often sudden and without warning, making it extremely dangerous and usually fatal if not treated immediately. A rogue brick on the highway might seem like a small obstacle, but it can be deadly. At high speeds, hitting a brick can cause a tyre blowout, loss of control, or even send the brick flying into another car's windshield. The sudden impact or swerve to avoid it can lead to serious accidents, potentially killing drivers or passengers in seconds. It's one of those dangers that's easily overlooked until it's too late. Maternal hemorrhage. I am routinely shocked by expectant mothers who want to give birth at home, arguing that they can always transfer to the hospital if there's a problem. No, they can't. If the wrong type of bleeding begins, they'll be dead before the ambulance gets there. Edit. As noted below, in some countries, certified nurse midwives attend home births with medications they can use to treat hemorrhage. However, that is not the case in the US, where insurance requirements mean that most CNMs must be attached to hospitals. In many American states, midwife is not a restricted term, so self-described midwives with no qualifications at all get hired to attend home births. The results are a fairly predictable higher mortality rate for home births versus hospital births in America. Poorly designed and manufactured submarines, milliseconds actually. Moving water. It's freaking dangerous. Water is heavy, so when it's moving, it has a lot of energy. It might not feel too bad walking through knee-deep flowing water, but if you fall, the water will have more area to push on. You may not be able to get yourself on your feet again. The Great Lakes. Just this past weekend, 4 people decided to go in the water near my house, even though the beach was under red flag warning and high waves. 3 got pulled out by a good Samaritan when they got in trouble. 3 days later, and Coast Guard and Fire Department still hasn't found the body of the 4th one. Riptides are real. Weather kicks up fast. The Great Lakes are huge and dangerous. This is not your local pontoon lake. Rust. If you run into a hole in the ground with rusty stuff inside, that does not get good ventilation. Don't go in. Rust is iron combined with oxygen, and it can eat all of the oxygen in the air. And fun fact, your body can't tell how much oxygen is in the air, but does sense carbon dioxide is there. So you don't know you are going until you are dead. Mixing isopropyl alcohol with bleach is a chemical hazard that most people aren't aware of, but it can be incredibly dangerous. When these 2 substances combine, they create chloroform and other toxic compounds. Inhaling these fumes can cause dizziness, nausea, and in severe cases, respiratory failure or even death. It's a silent but deadly mistake that can turn a routine cleaning task into a life-threatening situation within seconds. The reaction can also produce enough heat to cause burns or even ignite a fire. This is why it's crucial to always read labels and never mix household chemicals unless you're certain it's safe. If you get hit in the chest at a specific part of the heart's cardiac rhythm, dead. If you accidentally massage your carotid and have a vagal sensitivity, dead. If you have a genetic predisposition for certain arrhythmias and get startled, dead. The heart is a tricksy thing, eater. This is very rare. However, if you have any family members who have died unexpectedly and young and have a history of fainting for no reason, get an EKG ASAP. Not looking both ways before crossing a street seems like a basic rule, but it's one that can easily be forgotten in a moment of distraction. Failing to check for oncoming traffic can lead to being hit by a vehicle, and the impact can be fatal in an instant. It's a small mistake that can have life-altering consequences, turning a simple act like crossing the street into a deadly event. Unfortunately, it's something many people overlook, especially when they're in a hurry or distracted by their phones. Manipulations by chiropractors. And if the manipulation doesn't kill you, it can certainly cause paraplegia or quadriplegia, vertebral dissections. The sad part is that chiropractors will never own up to the fact, and they'll actually claim that patients are coming in with an active stroke. Unfortunately, a lot of their research is skewed. I would highly recommend looking into the American Medical Association, particularly neurologist, to see the detrimental effects that a chiropractor can have. It's unfortunate how many people die secondary to a chiropractic manipulations, particularly in the neck and back. For reference, I am an occupational therapist who has seen plenty of paraplegics and quadriplegics secondary to chiropractic injury. Inhalants, aka huffing. Intentionally inhaling anything aerosol, helium, nitrous, chemical with the intention of getting high. My 15-year-old brother was an artifact of that behavior when he died in a crash after his friend huffed air freshener while driving. And they never went to jail because the law didn't include inhalants. My family went before Congress and got the DUI law changed to include it, and it's known as Keith's Law. Power tools are incredibly useful, but they can be extremely dangerous if not handled properly. Even the ones that seem harmless can cause severe injuries or death in seconds if misused. A moment of inattention or a malfunction can lead to cuts, amputations, or worse. Many people underestimate the risks, thinking, "It won't happen to me," but accidents with power tools are more common than you might think. Always respect the power behind these tools, because one wrong move can be life-changing. The ocean is beautiful, but it can be deadly, especially when it comes to riptides. These powerful currents can pull even the strongest swimmers out to sea in seconds. Many people underestimate the ocean's strength, thinking they can swim against it, but riptides are relentless and can lead to drowning before you even realize what's happening. It's a hidden danger that claims lives every year, often because people don't recognize the warning signs until it's too late. A motorcycle. Crashed my Harley and have had 3 spinal surgeries, had 7 broken ribs, torn rotator cuffs. If I hadn't been wearing my helmet, which I didn't for years trying to be a tough guy, idiot, I probably wouldn't be writing this. Helmet was scraped down to the inner layer. Hi, I'm an EMS. Please wash your hands before you eat stuff. So many people come in contact with so many other people who have illnesses that can be contracted by eating with unclean fingers. Even if you've been around people you know all day, you never know who they've been around. And sometimes it's not even illnesses, rather random germs. And I know this is obvious to some people, but next time you see a local EMS crew eating food with their funny coloured gloves on, it's because we've made a habit, even if we hadn't run any calls that day. Of course, if you aren't in healthcare, you're not being exposed to as much, but sometimes you need a reminder just how dirty the outside world really is. LMAO. Do not fuck with koalas, they are capable of ending you. Eating polar bear liver. You'll die of vitamin A poisoning. Vitamin A is not water-soluble, and eating too much can lead to painful symptoms and death. 1 polar bear liver has enough to kill over 50 adults. Polar bear liver, not even once. Doing your own electrical work might seem like a good way to save money, but it's incredibly risky if you don't know what you're doing. One wrong connection or a simple mistake can lead to electrocution or a fire, which can happen in seconds. Electricity is unforgiving, and the consequences of an error can be fatal. That's why it's always safer to leave electrical work to a professional or someone with experience. The cost of hiring an expert is nothing compared to the potential danger of doing it yourself. I stopped 2 German or Austrian tourists from touching a poisonous frog in Colombia. They had no idea. They were inches away with their phones. I hadn't spoken German in years, but man, my panic reaction brought those words to the tip of my tongue real fast. Don't mess with wildlife, especially outside your own habitat. Scuba diving is an incredible experience, but it comes with serious risks that many people don't fully appreciate. One of the biggest dangers is losing track of time underwater. The deeper you go, the more crucial it becomes to monitor your time and oxygen levels. If you stay down just a minute too long, you risk running out of air or ascending too quickly, which can lead to decompression sickness or even death. It's easy to get caught up in the beauty of the underwater world and forget just how limited your time is. That's why strict attention to your dive plan and safety protocols is essential. The ocean is breathtaking, but it's also unforgiving if you're not careful. Eating or drinking is something we do every day without much thought, but it carries a hidden danger: choking. It only takes a small piece of food going down the wrong way to block your airway. And if you can't dislodge it quickly, the situation can turn fatal in seconds. It's a frighteningly common risk that most of us don't think about until it happens. That's why it's important to eat slowly and be mindful, especially with foods that are easy to choke on. Blood clot. A friend of mine stepped into his room for his jacket, never came out. He just dropped dead in his bedroom, jacket in hand. He had a leg injury, causing a massive bruise. The blood clot from the bruise broke loose and caused an embolism a week later. Using a massage gun on your neck. While handheld massage guns are generally safe to use on muscles, using them on the neck can be dangerous. The high vibrations produced by massage guns can injure unprotected areas of the neck and in rare cases can cause soft tissue damage or stroke-like symptoms. Air in the bloodstream is something most people don't think about, but it can be deadly. If air enters a vein or artery, it can cause an air embolism, which can lead to a heart attack, stroke, or death in a matter of seconds. A cut to a major artery, like the femoral artery in your leg, can also be lethal if not treated immediately. You might have seen this dramatized in war movies like Band of Brothers, where soldiers face such injuries. While the scenes might seem exaggerated, the reality is just as dire. If that artery is severed, you can bleed out quickly, and without immediate intervention, it's often fatal. It's a stark reminder of how fragile our bodies can be and the importance of immediate medical attention in such situations. Jumping into unknown water might seem like a fun adventure, but it's incredibly risky. You never know what's beneath the surface. There could be rocks, debris, or shallow areas that you can't see. One wrong jump can lead to severe injuries, paralysis, or even death if you hit your head or land awkwardly. It's a split-second decision that can have life-altering consequences. What seems like a harmless dive could end in tragedy if you're not careful. Stairs, lose your footing and the result can be fatal. Riding a bike without a helmet might feel freeing, but it's a dangerous gamble. A fall or collision, even at low speeds, can cause severe head injuries or even death. Helmets are designed to absorb the impact and protect your skull, but without one, your head is vulnerable to serious trauma. It only takes one accident to change your life forever. Many people underestimate this risk, but the consequences can be devastating in just a matter of seconds. Hard drugs laced with fentanyl. I lived in NYC until shortly after the pandemic. Lots of my friends are still into that partying lifestyle. Dancing all night, doing key bumps in the bathroom, all that stupid shit. Well, they are all freaking out lately because Fent is showing up in the coke, the molly, the everything. It's a really good time to be sober. Your first time could really be your last. Cars were mentioned. I was going to say taking off at a green light without waiting to see if someone runs a red light in the opposite direction. Years ago, I paused at green light probably longer than usual, but as I was about to go, someone blew the red light while speeding. If I had went, I would have been T-boned on the driver's side and probably died or been severely injured. It shook me for weeks thinking of my mortality after that moment. Entering or falling into a septic tank. Deaths are often not isolated to one person, but also the people who come in after in an attempt to rescue them. Running across the street and assuming the car sees you and will stop, just wait for the light. I would venture to say most people realize what can kill you instantly, but less commonly discussed would be dehydration. Yes, you can die within seconds from it. Heart failure is what gets you, and if you are already primed for a heart attack due to either unhealthy habits or genetics, dehydration can kill you in seconds. Some drop dead of a widowmaker right there on the spot. Dehydration truly is a gamble, so be cautious with it. Happens a lot in the summer months as people pick up alcohol and energy drinks instead of electrolytes. Using a pedestrian crossing and not watching out for traffic. Cars don't magically stop at crosswalks, but I see people doing this all time. I don't even cross until I see the car has completely stopped. I know the watch people die type subreddits are controversial, but holy crap, were they a good reminder of how quick you can be killed by cars, industrial equipment, random events out of your control. Honestly, they were a very good reminder of just how fragile we are. What was the scariest we need to leave now? Gut feeling that you've ever experienced? Serious. My brother and I were kids playing hide and seek in the front yard of our house. My brother was 3 and I was 6. My brother was supposed to be counting and finding me, but he was taking forever, so I peeked around the side of the house to see what was taking so long. He had lost interest in the game and was standing near the front gate which led to the street. As I'm looking, I see a brown car pull up with 2 men inside. The car wasn't familiar, and neither were the men. They both got out of the car and approached my brother. They started asking him questions and moving closer to him. I remember feeling panicked. I had learned about stranger danger in school and knew this wasn't right. I ran around the side of the house, flew through the back door, and screamed, "Someone is trying to kidnap Steve." My dad didn't hesitate. He got up and flew through the front door. When the men saw my dad coming through the door, they bolted and peeled out. From that day forward, we weren't allowed to play in the front yard anymore. It's a really scary memory for me. Does an "I need to go home now" feeling count? And it wasn't me, but my mom. Anyway, I was around 12 or so and my mom left to run an errand, leaving me alone. Very soon after she left, the doorbell rang. This was weird because we lived on a hill with only 2 neighbours. We all kept to ourselves, and we just didn't get random visitors. Thanks to some conveniently placed picture frames, I could see out the door without being seen. I look out and see a young man I don't recognise. He's dressed in a t-shirt and jeans, and something just feels off. So I ignore him and wait for him to leave, but he doesn't. He lingers and starts smoking. Again, this is an isolated hill. I'm alone, and now I'm getting scared. I go and hide and plan to wait for my mom, except she just left, had a few errands to run, and I couldn't reach the phone without the guy seeing me. As I'm trying to figure out what to do, my mom comes home. She runs in and asks if I'm okay. Apparently, she got this random go home now urge. She hadn't even run her first errand yet, but turned around immediately, found the guy in our yard and asked what he needed. I guess he muttered something about looking for someone or something to that effect, and my mom told him to leave. Apparently, he was acting very strangely and made my mom nervous. To this day, I have no idea what he wanted and no idea how my mom knew to come home, but I am very grateful she did. Me and my little sister went camping in the woods very close to our house when we were kids. We'd seen this bald guy with a blue shirt and a dog walking around, which isn't unusual for the area. You'll often see people walking and say hello. For some reason, though, I just got this tight feeling in my chest, and my sister must have too because we both just gave each other this look. I don't know what it was that made me do it. This is very out of character for me, but I took a photo of the back of him as he was walking away. A while later, we see the same guy again near the lake. He comes over and asks about the tent we're carrying, where we'll be setting up, and are we camping with our dad? We say yes, we're just going to see him now. A lie. We must have had the same moment of psychicness because we walked off up a fork in the path until we were out of view, then looked at each other and jumped down a path hidden by the bushes and waited behind them on the parallel trail for a bit. The guy watched us walk off, pretended to play with his dog until he couldn't see us, then turned around and ran up the path after us. Thankfully, he didn't see us hidden and carried on up straight where he thought we'd gone. We decided camping was a bad idea and went home. That evening, my mum shows us a post in the local residents group, which is a picture of the same bald guy trying to break into someone's house. Apparently, he'd just been walking around trying people's front doors and claimed to be a repair guy when he was stopped. I dread to fucking think what his intentions were, but it was very lucky me and my sister knew those woods so well. Otherwise, we wouldn't have thought to go down one of the hidden paths. I was at a family gathering, basically a reunion, but just for family within reasonable driving distance, probably 30 people all together. It was at County Park on a small lake with some grills and buildings, just an empty hall with some picnic tables inside. You could rent for this kind of stuff. The sky started darkening as a storm was approaching. All the coolers, chairs, balls, and other kids' toys, etc., were brought into the building anticipating the rain. The plan was to wait it out since afternoon showers are common just about every day in the summer. Something in the air didn't feel or smell right, even though it appeared to be just a regular afternoon storm. Hair on my neck was standing up and I was in full flight mode. Can't really describe it. The feeling in the pit of my stomach can only be described as absolute dread. I told my wife to take my daughter and get in the car. My brother-in-law took one look at my face and said, "What's wrong?" Apparently I was white as a ghost. It wasn't even raining yet, and I was full on panic, yelling for everyone to leave. Something isn't right. No one else was that worried, mostly concerned with how I was acting. I went out to the car, and as soon as I was about to turn the key, the tornado sirens went off. We were not far from wherever they put those, or they are just stupidly loud, because it was deafeningly loud. Now the rest of the family is pouring out of the building to their cars, kids crying, and I look across the lake, maybe a few miles in the distance, and see a funnel cloud. Got the hell out of there, as did everyone else. The building we had rented for this family BBQ thing was completely annihilated, literally just a slab of concrete and a shit ton of debris all around. It was hit dead on by an EF3. Wednesday midday, run along a beautiful river pathway near my apartment block. About 1 kilometre in, I felt people watching me and directly turned around and ran home, even though I did not see anybody. Closed the 2 magnetic gates leading up to my door and didn't see anybody around or follow me. About 10 minutes later, 2 guys were at my front door trying to push it in. I was luckily on the other side of the door at that moment and pushed it back closed with all my force and began screaming. I managed to security lock the front door and text my apartment block for help. I was on the 2nd floor, and they obviously watched which apartment I went into. Looking back at the apartment security cameras, they were able to see the 2 guys pull apart the magnetic security gates. 2 of them. The block then quickly changed the gates to a mechanic lock that cannot be pulled apart. I bartend, and years ago I kicked this guy out because he was acting very strange, muttering under his breath that he would kill my other customers, just really hostile. He had missing fingers on one hand and he was kind of a bigger guy. After bar close, I was almost finished counting money, so like an hour after everyone left, and I was just about to leave and I had that gut feeling. I looked out the window and that guy was standing on the corner watching me in a ski mask. I know it was him because of the build. As soon as I grabbed my phone, he took off, but the cops know who he is. Now he has a vendetta out against me and he's well known around town. He's fucking nuts. I was freshly married in my early 20s, living in Fallbrook, California. My husband, X, was a Marine and was at work, and I was driving home from visiting family further south. In order to get into Fallbrook, you have to travel along this long, dark and windy street called Mission Road. It's already a super dark night, about 11 p.m, and it's a little foggy as well. I'm slowing down and coming around this slight bend in the road, and all of a sudden the hair goes up on my neck, and I feel incredibly anxious. About 5 seconds later, a young woman jumps out of the brush directly ahead of me, maybe 50 feet away, on the left-hand side of the road, while waving her arms in the air and gesturing frantically for me to pull over. I swerved a bit to the right, slowing down even further, but I did not stop. She was young, maybe early 20s or even late teens, and a little dirty, and I was immediately conflicted over continuing to drive. But something told me not to stop under any circumstances. I got further up the road, slowed a little more, and dialed 911 with one shaky hand. The dispatcher said she'd send someone to check, but encouraged me not to feel badly. Apparently there had already been calls about this girl over the last hour, and they were unable to find her when police followed up. I heard a few weeks later about some carjacking, robbery attempts in the area. Very relieved I listened to my instincts that night. I was at the state fair with my mom and my best friend. Friend and I were looking at the rides and the games. This creepy guy, ABD, his blonde girlfriend, kept babbling at us about taking headshots and that he was a modeling agent. He just seemed off and really sleazy, and the girl was giving me the creeps, so I pretended that I saw my mum telling us to come and grabbed my friend and dragged her off. She was close to 5'8" and not a small girl since 13 years old. I was 4'9" and around 65 pounds at 14 years old. A few days later, there's a news story and rumours going around the school about 2 girls being kidnapped, assaulted and murdered. They were taken from the fair the same day we were there, just a few hours later. The creepy couple were Gerald and Charlene Gallegos, serial killers. I was 12 at the time, and my favorite thing in the world was spending the night at my grandma's house. We lived in the sticks at the time, and my grandma lived closer to the nearest town. Thursday night was grandma's night. I felt something off one Thursday night and asked my mom if I could just stay home with my mom and dad. They reluctantly agreed. I went home, watched some TV, and went to bed. My bedroom was on the adjoining wall to the living room. I wasn't really asleep, but I heard my mum keep saying my dad's name over and over again, with a hint of panic. I sneak out to the living room, and my dad is on the couch with his head tilted back, snoring, really loud. Which wasn't uncommon, but my mum was beside him, shaking him and telling him to wake up. She yelled at me to go back to bed. I didn't, obviously. I snuck to their bedroom to call 911. I told the dispatcher that my dad was asleep and my mum was trying to wake him up, but she couldn't. Eventually, the phone call went to the living room and my mom talked to the dispatcher. They sent an ambulance to the middle of nowhere. My dad had taken a bottle of diazepam to try to commit suicide. I remember sitting on the floor and holding his hand and repeating over and over that I loved him. The ambulance came and took him to the hospital. Lights and sirens the whole way. We didn't know what happened during that time, but we found out a day or so later, and that is when our world changed. I am very sure if I did not call 911 that night, that my dad would have succeeded, and it would have probably have drove my mum over the edge as well. And I have no idea why I didn't want to stay the night at my nanny's. I just had that feeling that I needed to go home. I stopped by a friend's house to watch a ball game. He, his wife and I were just relaxing and someone knocked on the door. It was the middle of the afternoon. He opened it up. He was expecting others might come by also. I hear him greeting someone. The guy was his brother I had never met, but had heard about. Very sketchy-looking guy, meth teeth, scrawny, long, greasy hair. My friend had told me that he had a brother who lived in the area who had a serious drug problem. Buddy is talking to his brother about nothing, and the guy gets a call on his cell. Whoever called, all he told them was, "Not yet. I'll call you later." Seems pretty obvious this guy has come to rob and most likely to take out witnesses. I look at my buddy, it seems he has come to the same conclusion. Now my buddy's wife is a no-nonsense type of woman, sweet but athletic. On the tall side, she had left the room to go to the bathroom, or so she said. She comes back in the room with a handgun. I'm thinking, WTF did I walk into? But she calmly says, "Ron, you're strung out and came here with bad intentions. You need to quietly leave. If you get any ideas, Chris, their son, is sitting outside in his truck to make sure you go." Ron doesn't say a word, he just turns and goes out the door. We can hear his old pickup drive away rapidly. Chris come in and says, "He's gone. I don't think he's coming back." They ask me to leave so they can decide what to do. They have already called the police, who are well acquainted with Ron. The next morning, my buddy calls me. The police said they found his brother in the trailer park where he lived, murdered with multiple gunshots. They are guessing he was in serious drug debt and had come to rob his brother. I told my buddy I was sorry. He said, "Don't be." Years ago, before cell phones, I was driving home from dropping my husband at the train at 4:30 a.m. Only me and one other car on the road. He started turning where I turned twice so I didn't go home. I went to an all-night gas station and called the police. I gave them a description of his car. 3 weeks later, he was arrested. Turns out he was following women home and driving past their house and doubling back to rape them. No one had noticed his car. I'm glad I paid attention. I was in Taco Bell with my daughter and I saw a guy come in and back out with a t-shirt over his hand. I told her to dump her tray and get moving. We went out to the car quickly and left. Found out later on the news that the guy robbed the place with the gun hiding under his t-shirt. Years ago, I was at a club with some friends. I was at the bar and for some reason looked down at the other end of the bar and saw two guys quietly arguing. They tried to keep from being overheard, but I saw their agitated face. I went back to my group of friends and told them we should go. This was a popular club and it took us forever to get in, so they didn't want to leave. I don't know what came over me, but I picked up my friend's girlfriend, she was barely 5 feet tall, and started walking to the door. She was kicking the entire time, and the rest of the party followed me outside, telling me to put her down. When we got outside, we heard the distant pop pop and people screaming. We looked at each other for a second, then ran for our cars. I forgot to put her down and was still carrying her over my shoulders. Update. Dang! I didn't think this would blow up. It was the early 1990s and we were at a club in Miami. If I recall correctly from the local news, it was a drug deal that went bad between two groups. No one was killed, but they wounded each other and a couple of innocent people. LOL. I'm still not carrying her today. The legend of false. Those two eventually got married and they mentioned me in their speech. Something about the other groomsmen holding me back so that I don't get the urge to carry her across the doorway. I'm a teenage girl who worked at a restaurant/pizza shop. I was harassed by these two men one weekend who were totally wasted, so they were kicked. The following weekend, they return, and they tried to sit next to me at counter which is connected to bar. But they couldn't, so they chose a table across from me and moved both their seats to look right at me, then would only order from my counter instead of our waitresses, was staring at me, making jokes about killing a girl, and kind of just freaking me out. I ended up going to our upstairs employees only section to fold boxes, up there all alone, down an hallway where nobody would hear me. I ended up feeling sick to my stomach as I heard someone walk up the stairs and whispering, and I closed the door and turned my music off and texted me Mum. The two followed me up there, then tried to go down, then unlocked hallway, but another waitress noticed them bothering me and caught them trying to come after me. I just had a gut feeling as I heard them coming, and she came down the hallway and told me to be quiet and hold our body weight against the door. We waited for them to leave as they stood there, waiting for me to come out before making some remarks about not knowing where I was, then going back down. My dad came and picked me up early because I just felt so off. The following day, I had to come in for another shift, and as I was clocking out, the TV started playing a true crime documentary on a girl with the same name as me who was kidnapped and assaulted by two men. My stomach dropped and shortly gave my notice after that. I realized I wasn't going to be protected there and wouldn't be surprised if they returned again. Standing outside my friend's house watering their garden while they were away on vacation. Not even 30 seconds after I shut the door and locked it, about 6 men started pounding on the door, reaching in the mail slot trying to unlock said door, telling me to come out plus, calling me cutie and other degrading pet names. Sitting in my friend's backyard with their 2 kids, my husband and another friend, enjoying pizza that my host made. It was a beautiful, clear day with no real wind. We're having a great time just out of the pool and hungry for pizza, when I suddenly felt on edge. I looked straight at the kids, about 8 and 10 or so years old, and just said, "Get in the house." We all scramble, and a second later we heard creaking. And maybe 5 seconds after it started, this big branch fell off of their pine tree onto the table where we were sitting. Thankfully, no one was hurt besides having to pick pine needles out of our pizza. I can only assume that I subconsciously heard the branch starting to give. When we were in our teens, my sister and I were walking our dog in our local forest area very close to our childhood home. We were about to leave and had just clipped our dog back up when a lady appeared out of nowhere and started chatting to us. She was odd. She told us her dog would love some socialization with our dog and could we go back with her for 5 minutes. What I hadn't clocked, but my sister had, was that her dog was nowhere to be seen. The lady was almost rounding us up to head back towards the forest when, little did I know, my sister had spotted a van out of the corner of her eye. I was still oblivious at this point. Suddenly, my sister screams, "Dad!" And to our luck, my dad had finished work and was now out on a run. He starts waving and running towards us, and as we turn back around, the lady had vanished. My sister looks back over at the van and sees the lady closing the passenger door and it speeding off. Dog still nowhere to be seen. I believe we were minutes away from abduction. It was divine intervention that my dad happened to be at the right place at the right time. When I was around 9 or 10, my mum took me with her on a business trip to a nearby city. This is before smartphones, when you still had to MapQuest stuff. We were supposed to meet my mum's co-worker at the mall for something. Since her friend had given her directions, we didn't bother going down to the hotel computer to print directions. I think there was maybe one there. This was around 2000 to 2001. We got lost and ended up pulling into a small storage unit place to pull out a map. It was just 2 rectangular buildings, maybe a total of like 20 units. I don't remember why exactly, but I was really scared and kept crying and asking if we could just go back to the hotel. I assume she got fed up with her kid crying in the passenger seat and she couldn't quite figure out where we were, so we went back to the hotel. The next day, they found the bodies of 2 teenagers in one of the units we pulled in front of. I was hammock camping while riding my motorcycle through Arkansas. I had a dream that I was getting pulled over by the cops on my bike. The flashing lights were super bright in my eyes. And as I woke from my dream, I noticed my blue hammock tent is lighting up like flashing police lights. I immediately felt an adrenaline spike and went into full flight mode. Packed my shit up faster than I could even put my boots on. Hopped on my bike in my underwear and rode a mile to the top of the campground where the showers were. The second I stepped into the shower cabin, the sky opened up and cloud to ground. Lighting started striking trees in the campground every 10 to 15 seconds. I could have been royally fucked up by a lightning strike had I stayed sleeping between 2 of them. I was scuba diving in Asia. 3 of us went to a reef that hadn't been dived on before, which bottomed out at 50 to 70 meters depth. 5 minutes into the dive, we all get a very bad feeling like we were being watched. Ignored it, but the feeling wouldn't go away. Further 10 minutes into the dive, we all watched the silhouette of a white shark glide slowly past, right on the periphery of where we could see. Then glide back in the other direction a minute later. The decompression stop to get out was the scariest 3 minutes of my life. My little brother and I were playing catch near dusk on our family's 30-acre property deep in the mountains, far from civilization. It had gotten dark enough that we were about to head back when we heard the most chilling scream coming from the trees just beyond the clearing. It was the kind of scream that makes your blood run cold. A sound so horrifying, it felt like a woman was being tortured in unimaginable pain. Even after decades, just thinking about that scream sends shivers down my spine. What made it even worse was when we realized what had made that sound: a mountain lion. Female mountain lions, especially when they're in heat, emit a scream that eerily resembles a woman being torn apart. For 2 kids alone in the dark, surrounded by wilderness, it was pure terror. Instinct took over. I grabbed my brother's arm, and we bolted up the hill faster than I ever thought possible. Even now, 25 years later, I can still feel the fear from that night. Some memories just never fade, no matter how much time passes. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. Share your scariest experience in the comments below. We'd love to hear it. See you next time.